How long do you hold it for? You gotta hold it for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I think people can still hear you. I didn't like kick you guys out.
Oh, that's fine. Hi guys.
Oops, slipping back.
It's a very professional presentation, everyone.
Oh
Oops.
no, his phone's gonna turn off.
I think that might be the beginning. We'll start with that. So
Hi. Rini actually muted herself during that whole thing.
I was laughing too hard.
welcome everyone. I feel like that was a good start for my
That was
channel.
great. That was great. Great
Excellent
intro.
job. Perfect.
So we got Phil's chair, we got Irene muted off camera, we got Hype Wizard. What's up? As the wizard.
I'm good,
What's
man.
up?
How's it going?
What's up?
What's up, everyone?
What's up, Phil?
It's the creative block, yo.
We're back.
You're welcome to episode, what is it? Episode Creative Block, episode 8, Psychology and Quotes. Welcome to the show, everyone.
Quotes are to fill the time. Because I'm like, you can always go over good quotes.
If the conversation runs dry, you're like, I have like 20 tweets pulled up that we can like talk about for
Just
an
start
hour.
reading weird inspirational quotes.
Yeah, I googled Napoleon quotes. Dude, that guy has some crazy quotes all over the place too. He's like,
Really?
yeah, he's like says ridiculous things in every direction. I'm like, that was his strategy. Just threw shit on the wall to see what sticks. He ends up saying like very prescient, smart things though sometimes.
Cool. I didn't know Napoleon was
A
he's
quoter
a good
guy. It's
yeah.
I don't even know really, but I think it's because he was like in exile for a long time. So he's like, well, I guess I'll just like write a bunch of quotes.
Oh yeah, a lot of times just marinate in his own head.
Was he in exile before he was like some military leader guy or after?
I think
Like-
maybe there was both. It's like he was in exile, then he came back and did
He's
some more
double
stuff.
exiled. Imagine being double fucking exiled. You get exiled, you claw your way back up, and then you fuck up again, back into exile.
Double X.
Double X.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about psychology. What's the theme? The theme is like psychology, relatability kind of being a key word because they sort of overlap. And I'll get into that. And it's like psychology. I was talking with Rini about it. It's like how it can inform like a scene or inform dialogue, a psychological concept. And you can imagine too, sometimes a scene might not have that. And it might, if you're like doing drafts and you do like the third draft and you're like, oh, there's some like this psychological concept happening here, then all of a sudden the writing can get easier, feel a lot better, kind of feel the scene feels a lot better. So just for me, I don't even know them all. So a lot of this is me forcing myself to kind of do a little research and report back too. So I'm kind of trying to expand my own horizons a little bit. It's something that I wanted to mess with, some psychology stuff.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm into psychology stuff too. I think you can't really study character writing without delving into psychology. So this should be a fun show.
Yeah, and I was wondering, like, because I kind of think, what is it? It go psychiatry or whatever, or therapy. I kind of think that's like overly talked about today, and it's kind of stupid and cringy. But then so I was like, well, maybe it's stupid. But I was like, no, psychology. There's some shit there. There's a reason people talk about what they do or whatever.
Well, most of the time I hear psychology being talked about nowadays, it's usually like you're broken and you just have to deal with it and you need to cope. And there's like hardly any conversation about how to move past the stuff that's fucked you up. It's just like, oh, I have trauma. Instead of moving past it, like I just have it, got to deal with it. Whereas like storytelling seems like a proxy for actually dealing with trauma, like to make people grow and stuff. Like you're actually supposed to deal with the issues. So like if you have a mindset of like you just have to deal with this now, it's like you're not going to be able to tell the story.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I think our our culture now is definitely, well, the more problems you have, the cooler you are. When it's like,
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, everyone has problems and they don't never stop, so you're not special. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't, like, they're not important. You should be solving it, but a lot of people kind of glorify
Well,
it. It's
The
weird.
thing that I found out that is best to do is you just you find a hole in yourself and then you stick all those problems down deep into
Yeah.
the hole.
Right.
You
And then
show
you
the
don't
food and
ever
sex
talk
and
about
drugs.
it.
And then you don't
And-
talk about it, and then nothing bothers you. It's amazing.
And you pretend to be a well-adjusted adult, and once in a while, when you're really drunk, it all blows up, and
Wow.
and then
Yeah.
the next day you act like nothing happened.
Yeah, that's relatable. That's why I keep thinking a lot of this stuff's relatable. So if you have a character like that boils over the top when they're drunk and spurgs out, like they might act in a way that's not likable. But me reading it, I would be like, I kind of like this person because they're like being honest, or they're experiencing life, the ups and downs the way we all do, kind of.
Mhm.
I want to use the quote: "The more problems you have, the cooler you are."
Yeah, doesn't
somewhere.
that sum up our current society? It
Sounds like
just
a Hot
looks like-
Topic t-shirt.
Yeah.
That's a t-shirt. That's totally a t-shirt design.
Oh, it's like Jay Ryan in the chat says, I think Danzig took your video down, Phil. Killed the chat at the end. Yeah, for some reason, I streamed like 2 hours ago. At the end of my stream, the chat stopped working, but I'm the one that took it down because we watched this satanic anime trailer, and
Oh.
there was nude boobs in it.
Oh, well done, Phil.
Oops.
But it was art. But I have a warning on my channel for some reason from
Uh-oh.
before, so I didn't want to get another one, so I just took the stream down.
Yeah, that sucks. YouTube is prudish. So that sucks.
But it was on YouTube, that video, so
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The way Nicole J is asking why I'm not wearing a hat. Though I would, but I moved recently and I lost all my hats in my
What?
move. I need to
Woo!
reacquaint myself with some hats.
You
Oh.
should have gone on Amazon and got like a raccoon skin hat and
What?
pretended that you'd slain the raccoons.
Oh no!
Why?
No.
That's solidarity.
No.
Yeah, it would be just so I could walk amongst them. It wouldn't be that I killed them. I'm trying to join. their
Yes. Narwhal wouldn't kill the raccoon. We're all cowboys today. Look at that.
You know, change the brim. There's wire in this thing, so I can change the shape of it. But yeah, I've gone
Oh,
cowboy wizard mode.
Fancy.
I'm just the sunburned cowboy then in this scenario.
Like a sunburned cowboy.
Squinting into the distance.
So I want
There's
to
a pain on his face.
We got
One
74
person.
people watching. Thanks everyone for being here. We might get started sooner there rather than later. I might play this video. We'll jump in. I
Welcome
realized
to the Bogans, by the way. Welcome to the Bancroft Raiders. No, we'll finally figured out how to do fucking raids. So now you're all over here. And even last time, at least this time, you didn't make like 2 separate shows and have people waiting in the room of the other one.
yeah, I accidentally sabotaged my last time, but it worked
Okay.
out. Yeah, and Bancroft walked me through step by step how to set my channel up. It was actually only 2 steps, so literally step by step, which is nice.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's pretty easy. I still don't know how to raid other people, but it's easy to set yourself up to be raided.
I can't raid other people because I'm not monetized yet.
Oh,
We'll get
Won't
you
even
there.
let
brother.
me.
we will.
We'll get you there. So I want to preface this video with my girlfriend really likes Adam Driver.
Yeah,
And thinks
I like him
Phil
too.
looks like Adam Driver.
She gets around me being angry about that by saying, but I was going to do her voice in a British accent for some reason.
Hello, I'm Phil Sculpin, I am.
Viv, you look like Adam Driver. Which I take offense to. But
Oh dear.
because of his nose. But Camel Moon said Adam Driver is just a dollar store Phil Diaz. So appreciate that.
There you
Oh,
go. It looks like a
wait.
melted, older Phil Diaz.
Mhm.
You know, something I think everyone sees the world differently, and for some reason I can't see big noses. Like big noses look
What?
normal to me,
What
and
the?
then like all your guys' normal noses look tiny.
That's that. Is that why when you draw the noses, you draw really like boing?
Oh, I guess so. Yeah,
You have a
nose
nose
relativity.
fixation? This
Wait,
Yeah, I think
You're
big
also a
noses
fan
are
of big
cool.
noses, Noel?
I think it represents like good pheromones or something.
we must delve into this nose thing that Jake and Narwhal have.
Yeah. What, Jake? You like noses too?
Big nose.
I've famously been a fan of women with epic schnozzes. Not too big, like not crazy, because it can get a bit. But you know, when so okay,
Carnal doesn't
okay.
even have a nose though. So
That's true.
Yeah, but he's a guy. I don't want to fuck him. But yeah, like there's this whole thing of fucking Disney pointy nose plastic surgery supremacy, where like all of these amazing like noses of the world are like the Roman nose, you know what I mean, the Greek nose or whatever. They're all getting destroyed by plastic surgery because all these people want the tiny pointy Disney nose, and it's like, oh, pull one
Oh, yeah,
out for
women
all
have
dead
their-
noses.
yeah, I like a good strong nose in men and women.
Even women without big noses hate their nose because they think their nose is big.
That's kind of true. I mean, that's kind of like the modern, or I don't know if it's just a modern beauty standard. It's women should be dainty and stuff.
But I know
Yeah,
women that like
Denison
big
says I
noses.
love
aren't
Roman
dying.
noses.
Women used to bind their feet.
Well, yeah, that was barbaric savage bullshit, and that's.
Why did they do that? Why
It
is that?
wasn't
Why was that a
women.
thing?
It was. Well, I mean, women were part of it. It was just families. It was rich Chinese families would bind their daughters' feet because the idea was, well, if your feet are completely fucked and malformed and like crumpled up, then that means you're so rich you don't have to even walk or do chores.
Damn,
It's
that's crazy.
no fucking sense. Like Chinese people had so many fucked up weird traditions. I know.
That's
And
like,
it was also seen as like like a weird sexual thing. There were manuals from the Qing Dynasty about how to play with the women's like lotus feet. That's what they called it, except they're all shriveled up and crumpled up and gross.
See,
Yeah.
that's like a cultural thing that could be on your show that you did for Creative Block.
But licking hobbled feet.
We'll go back next time on my channel. We'll talk about crumpled up feet.
Just feet and noses. My channel's noses. Irene's
Yeah, that'll be what, episode 12 or whatever on Rini's channel. Creative Block, episode 12, feet and noses.
Yeah, let's get all the.
I before I play this too, I have a quick anecdote about Adam Driver, and it was I saw the movie where he's the knight who like rapes the girl. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Came out.
Yeah, it was great.
The last.
I mean, the film.
Duel.
The last duel, yeah. It was pretty good. But so in that movie, he plays a badass knight who's like whatever, kind of suave, strong, tall dude. He's definitely kind of like an alpha male knight guy.
No, he's the Sigma. The other guy is struggling to be an alpha, but he's being like effortless Sigma.
Okay, we can get into that in a second, but yeah, let me just, so he's like the type of guy where I was almost thinking like, yeah, like this guy, the scene is they're in a line to kneel to the prince and say like, I pledge my allegiance to you, my prince, and they kiss his hand on their knee. And I was thinking in my head, I was like, this is a psychological thing. I was like, how would I write this guy? Because I don't know, like trying to put my head in the mind of like, how does a super alpha guy deal with that situation where he has to kneel and kiss another guy's hand? And so I'm wondering, I was really curious to see how Adam Driver played it. So I'm watching, and Adam Driver played it like classic, like he would, that he is definitely in real life like a badass because he knows psychologically how to get in this guy's head. But he does it like it's no thing. He doesn't even think about it. He just kneels, kisses the guy's hand, says it. It like doesn't cross his mind that it might have been like playing, these games of who's above and who's below, because that is like the people that are the highest don't even think about that shit. So
Yeah,
that
like,
was
what
his,
is a king to a god?
yeah, his take on the character in that case was really good, I thought, and he's a good actor. But so I'm going to play this. This is like, I don't know how much this even applies, but let's watch this clip.
I got a question before you start that.
Yeah.
So you've seen the film. Do you think he used a peen double at the end there when you seen his peen?
Oh, I forget. I don't
Did you
know.
actually see his dick in the
I don't
film?
remember. I don't remember no Adam Driver peen.
It wasn't really focused on the.
I didn't, but
I was watching his nose.
my girlfriend certainly did.
She's like, oh my god, Phil, your dick just looks like his too.
Oh my god.
Why didn't you Adam drive me home with that thing?
Okay,
Only
play the
getting a
video.
little weird.
Play the video.
Okay, playing it.
As soon as the movie was over, I looked
Jake.
up to see whether you were married,
Yeah.
and you are.
I am. Yeah.
And I don't want to ask any questions about your marriage because your marriage is one thing and the movie is a totally different marriage. And I don't want to conflate the two.
Yeah.
But I certainly watched the movie thinking, oh, what would I do in this situation? In what way? It made me question ways in which I'm a good and a bad husband
Oh, sure.
by watching.
I'm pausing it just so it doesn't strike or whatever. That's like a little bit of that relatable thing, I guess. Like, I don't know how you even get to that, but it's always good when you have that going on. Okay, I'm gonna keep playing.
It.
Sure.
You know, it's a relatable series of indictments and celebrations of their relationship. Could you have played this part if you didn't know what it was like to be married?
I think so. I think
His answer is awesome. So I want to talk about his answer. So we'll listen.
it's hard to say because I didn't do it the other way, but I don't even know that you in a way it's my job as an actor to tell the story of the script, and my relationship to it in a way is immaterial in a sense. I wouldn't even say that's my job to have a feeling. It's my job to tell the story of what it is, and if it's the audience's job to have a feeling, you know, because you could be having all the feelings you want, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's being telegraphed through the story. You know, then you're just watching someone emote, and that's, I think, uninteresting. So
yeah,
I
it
think
would be like me at.
That's the end of his answer.
I like it.
Yeah, it's kind of good stuff. I don't know. Well, so it's like one thing is if you need someone emoting, it is boring. If you see someone like crying, it's almost like cringy or whatever. But then if you know why they're crying, it gets a lot more engaging, and that can get into like the psychology type stuff, I think, maybe. So that's like a little bit of a segue. I don't know. What do you guys, when you see that clip, does that bring up any thoughts?
Yeah, I really like that because it's especially him being like, oh, this is a role. This is a job that I'm doing. My goal is to make the viewer feel something. And so that's what's in his head during the thing. And it's like, as a creator and writer, very similar, because the story you're crafting, you're trying to kind of control or herd people's emotions into a certain area, right? And the story's not happening to you. So when you're creating these things, or when you're, I guess, acting or writing, you want to know the goal of how the audience should feel in the moment of your story. And if you know that, then you could best support that in your craft and in your writing as well. But yeah, that clip was great.
Yeah, I have never really been taken by Adam Driver, but I have a lot more respect for him now because he seems like he's actually serious about acting and he's not just some entitled celebrity. I didn't know that. I know nothing about him except Star Wars. But I do like that answer a lot. I think that's a great way for creatives to approach things. And I think in a lot of movies now, they sort of... I don't know really how to tie this into psychology, but as far as how to be a storyteller goes, I think he's approaching it in the right way because I think if you focus on the plot and the point of the story and he's acting from a script, but even for any of us, if we're creating comics, if we're putting the story first and telling the story to an audience, imagine it's like you're a storyteller around a campfire. Like you're not trying to, it's not about your feelings. It's not about everybody attention on you. You're not the star. You're telling the story, and you want to entertain the people sitting around the fire listening. And if a creative approaches things like that, then the emotions of the characters in the story will naturally come, if that makes sense. But I see a lot of these. I think that's a problem with entertainment now, where along with movies that are a lot of CGI and really pretty and everybody's acting really emotional, but you don't feel anything because there's no meat to it. There's no sort of through line and theme, and the plot makes no sense, and there isn't like a psychological impact.
Well,
There.
a lot of that too is what he's saying is if you get your own personal emotion wrapped up into the media too much, it can conflate things, and then you lose a connection with the audience because you're not making the theme broad and relatable. It's kind of a personal thing that's happening, you know.
Yeah, like you want to see a character on the screen, not the actor on the screen.
Right, not the creator, right? And there's glimpses, of course, in all of our work, and in all literature and stuff like that. But you need to stick to the theme that's going to relate to your audience and make that connection. You don't want to see, like you said, the creator on the page.
Mm-hmm.
Gets in the way.
Yeah, it's like I like the idea of backloading it, thinking of the end point being the audience. And yeah, it's not a one-to-one translation is a kind of a good takeaway too. Like it doesn't mean like guy on screen is sad, therefore I'm sad. And that's usually not how stories work either. And I think there's a translation from stories. There isn't necessarily like feelings in stories. It's more like that. It's like the feelings that the audience gets are like untranslated emotions, and you can translate them later. That you're like, oh, that's what I was feeling. But you almost want it to be you're getting feelings, but you don't know what they are even. That's like really good audience experience. And one of the ways you do that is you got to have that really strong connection. And my ex-roommate's sister, they all watch Bravo and shit, and she calls it new acting. She's like, new acting is bad. And I'm like, oh yeah, there's like a new thing. Like I don't know.
New acting? What's new acting? Just overacting, or
yeah, it's kind of what Rini is talking about in Phil. Like it's like where you're doing a lot of emotional, expecting the one-to-one transfer, and it's not happening, and that is not necessarily good acting.
Like I like that idea of the working backwards from what you want the viewer or reader to feel, because like there was a question I asked a long time ago on this show, which was like, what would you rather change, the story or change your characters? Like if the characters didn't fit the story, would you change them, or would you fit the story to fit the characters? And like it was a character show, so I think everyone said no, we'll keep the characters how they are and change the story. But like in my own writing, I'll sometimes adjust whole bits of the story, but even like aspects of a character's personality to fit what I actually want the reader to feel when they're reading it. Like if I'm writing a story and I've formed these characters and stuff, and they're not really, I don't think they're giving the reader the feelings I would want them to feel, I kind of even adjust the characters sometimes to behave a bit differently.
This might be a little contrarian. Surprise, I'm being contrarian. But I think of approaching it by focusing on what the viewers or readers should be feeling is that definitely works, but I don't think that's really a necessity. I think it's more about staying true to the character. Like it's not about your emotions, it's about the character's emotions. And I've found that writers I know, and sometimes in my own work as well, instead of because to some sense, I don't think you can control what everyone feels, because I've shown my work to 5 different people and they'll feel different things, but they would all like it and they'll latch onto different parts of that chapter that they like. And I think the way to get there is know your characters and stay true to them, have them develop in a logical sense, and that's what creates a compelling story. And I think as long as it's compelling and true to the character, it's not somebody on a soapbox like just professing their feelings and making it all about the creator, then that story would work.
Yeah. 114 people watching. Thanks everyone for being here. Haldir6480. Have you guys seen Welcome to the NHK? I've heard it, and I saw it in like college, but I kind of forget. But I remember it being pretty good and cool and weird, kind of. It's like 20 years old or 10, 15 years old maybe. But
No,
I haven't seen. I've heard of it though. Though, just appending to what I said earlier, I think with Adam though, because he is an actor, I think like his job isn't. I think he would his answer would probably be different if he was like a script writer. As an actor, it would be about, well, I need to portray this thing on a script in a way that the audience can see and that they will feel the way I'm acting. And I would equate that to if you're an artist, like if you're, when any of us are just drawing the page and drawing the characters' expressions and their pose, and you want to make sure that that's conveyed correctly, that's what Adam's talking about. And that's kind of the equivalent to an actor's role in a movie.
Right. Well, Colbert is asking him basically the question that creators get asked of, like, can you write a story about something that you have no relation to, like being a woman, right? Like if I'm writing a female character and people are like, oh, why, how could you write a good female character? You're not female. It's basically the same question he's asking Adam. It's like, would you have played this part differently if you had never been married? And he's like, no, I think I would. It's my job to do this. Like I have to pretend like I'm married to this person. Like,
Right. And I think with that's part. That's really interesting. I actually just saw a Twitter thread from some CG people talking about like, well, what does it take to write the gender opposite of you? Because so many people in Hollywood now are terrible at it, and it's part of it is definitely just having empathy. Like if you really understand people, you're interested in other people, and you're not making a story about you all the time, then you'll be able to put yourself in someone's shoes, but also research and getting to talk to people and always understanding. And that's part of understanding people, like actually knowing them and seeing their point of view. That makes sense.
Well, it even ties into the kind of like current cultural trend of like, you only understand you don't understand anyone else. You can only relate to you. And it's like, no, you can kind of abstract your experience. You can, if you actually have an interest in other people, you can talk to them and learn about them instead of just yourself.
Yeah, that mentality's grown stronger over the last 4 years, I think. And it's
part of the woke thing. Yeah.
It's gotten really bad, and it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Because what's the point of storytelling? It's putting yourself in the shoes of someone who's not you.
I think one aspect of why that is happening, by the way, that doesn't get talked about is the more when you're online interacting with people, it's very low fidelity. It's kind of like in Jurassic Park when they don't have enough DNA to make the dinosaur and they fill it in with the frog DNA. So then the park goes crazy because of it. The low fidelity of online interaction means you project a lot of yourself onto everything because you've got to fill in the DNA code to comprehend a lot of stuff. So it's almost like people literally are just swimming in themselves constantly. If they're not interacting with people in real life, and a large part of their socialization could be online, like not hanging out in calls and stuff, but like they pretty much might just only be hanging out with themselves all the time if they're just projecting constantly.
That could be what's actually happening and we just don't know it yet. Like it's all AI. You guys are all AI and I'm just by myself.
Yes, we're all AI generated. The whole world is an illusion.
Yeah. Michael Dice says, to make your audience hate your villain, subtly give him the symptoms of a DSM personality disorder. Not obviously, but it will resonate with your audience as everyone has dealt with these annoying types. What's DSM stand for? Do you guys know?
I don't know what it stands for.
It stands for dumb sissy man.
No. It's a psychological thing. It came up during the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial, and it was like basically it's like a psychopathy, bipolar, all the like the crazy personality.
Oh, what's this the negative stuff? Like narcissism and shit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an actual test that psychologists, psychiatrists, I don't know the difference. They give patients to.
Yeah, DSM-5 lists 10 specific disorders: paranoid, schizoid, schizotypal, antisocial, borderline, narcissistic, avoidant, just all the personality disorders.
Yeah. And he says that it resonates. I think that's a good keyword. That's kind of what I'm thinking of with like relatable. And it, like with what Adam Driver was saying, is like it's boring to just watch someone emote, and you need this relatability, and context is what does that of the
Yes.
story, and psychology can provide that. It's like a little secret weapon maybe that we're kind of focusing on, because I don't think you necessarily need it. This is something I was thinking too, is there's like thrillers and there's psychological thrillers, and there's horror and there's psychological horror. And I'm like, what changes when you put psychological in front of the genre? Then what does that mean? Like, I can think of examples like Silent Hill 2 is a psychological horror story. Then like what's like a not psychological horror story? Like, I don't know if it's Saw or whatever, or like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where it's
Yeah.
like it's less important what's in their head, and it's very important what's in his head in Silent Hill 2. And for thrillers, kind of the same thing. So if you're in someone's head and it's an important part of the story, then it's psychological. So there are stories that don't do it. So that's kind of one thing about, we're talking a lot about something kind of specific. It could apply broadly to everything, but it applies specifically not to everything, I think.
Hmm.
When you're saying psychological compared, so okay, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, some guy's gonna saw me in two, but like, what's the psychological version? There might be a ghost in here that might make me saw myself in two. Like, I'm wondering what
Yeah,
makes it psychological.
I think it's the way the story is presented. Maybe I just can't. I mean, just off the top of my head, I think that's probably the difference. Like if you're focusing on the external threat versus if the story is focused on how the characters internally feel, like their fear.
Yeah, totally. Like if she already encountered a terrible experience like that 20 years ago, and that's affecting this experience and coloring it and changing it, that would be psychological.
Yeah, like if that happens, like as a trauma from when she was a kid, now she's an adult, and
Ooh, okay.
her, I don't know, boyfriend lives in the house that happened, and now she's like having this psychological trauma come back, even though there's no one there killing her. You know,
F in the chat says psychological romantic comedy. I'm wondering if you can do this with any other genre, or if just like getting inside someone's head is innately fear or thrilling, and you can't like make it funny. Like, could you have a psychological comedy?
We were talking a few weeks ago about Slice of Life, and I think Slice of Life has to be psychological, almost a lot of it, or else you got nothing else to go on. You
Oh, that's
can't
interesting.
you can't have like crazy action or whatever. So a lot of what keeps it interesting is the psychological stuff.
Did you guys see the movie The Babadook?
Yeah.
No, I keep on being told that I should watch it, but I think a similar movie, from what I've heard, is The Orphanage. Have you guys seen that one? That's a really good one. So
Getting coffee.
okay, Manuel. So I won't spoil it too much, but because people haven't seen. But if I know what the Babadook is about, I haven't seen it. But The Orphanage is really similar in a way. It's like seems to be a supernatural. It's set in an orphanage, and there's this woman dealing with a mystery, and her child went missing, and a really cool thing unveils, and it's very psychological, and it's at the end you look back and you wonder how much of it was just illusions and things in her head, and how much of it was things really happening, and it was really, really well done. And so I think like that's a psychological horror movie.
Yeah. Splatbag says in the movie Splice, when the experiment changes to the woman's childhood home, her personality changes. That would count. And I was thinking any paranoia movie automatically counts, because that's like Rosemary's Baby. The whole question of the movie, it's kind of like, oh, was it real or not? But it's like, is it actually happening or not? And then they kind of confirm at the end, and the audience has that exact same question as they're watching her. So your relation, your umbilical cord to her brain is like really strong. It's like the same. That is more of like almost like a one-to-one kind of thing.
So Metal Movies and Brewskis brings up So I Married an Axe Murderer, and that is actually a psychological romantic comedy.
Yeah, that's a paranoia. It's all about paranoia.
Yeah, and it's got comedy and Mike Myers falling in love, and
So
Like-
it can be done.
yeah, it's a pretty good film too. It's pretty
Wow.
funny.
All right.
Yeah, good call there, Matt.
I have to watch that. I'm curious.
Silence of the Lambs is a simple example of psychological horror. So that one is like, that's a little harder because I'm like, a lot of that's external. It's just a cool mystery about trying to find a killer. But there is some psychology. Yeah, I guess there's that simple psychology layer added onto it because it's her and her memory of the lambs, and that she is like this like innocent person thrust into this insane dark world.
Yeah, and the games that Hannibal plays with her as well, very psychological.
Yeah, it's
Um,
like the mind game aspect.
Narwhal, what do you think of American Psycho? Do you think that would fall into? I think it's pretty psychological.
Yeah,
But
I
then-
think so. And I think that movie's kind of awesome. But that, that movie, this is like a little separate thing, but it confuses me because it's become a meme now and everyone's talking about it and it's become popular. And people are calling it a literally me movie, which is a subgenre. And where like, oh my God, literally me for reals. And I'm like, what is literally me about that guy though? I don't get it. I'm either missing it. Like, I don't know. I guess there's a literally me that because he is kind of like annoyed by business people, even though he is one and he wants to kill them because he hates this whole, he has loathing for the whole business situation. And that's kind of relatable and kind of funny. But he takes it out by killing people with an axe, which is not relatable. But feelings are potentially kind of relatable. So you can maybe be literally me, but it's like he's a psycho killer though. So I don't
But
know.
then at the end, it's left ambiguous if he ever killed anyone in the first place.
Yeah. So that would probably be psychological. It seems like you can, even if you, with a little bit of retrofitting, you could fit almost everything into psychological.
Yeah, I'm
'Cause you
trying to
pretty
think
much
how you
need some of
actually
that.
define it.
Well, it's because I was just thinking just that you can't tell any story without delving into the character's internal journey and also having an external conflict, maybe with the exception of Slice of Life. But I don't think Slice of Life is devoid of conflict. It's just very mundane daily tasks. Like the drama is going to the grocery store and you can't find lettuce or some shit. But because it's about the degree to which you focus on that aspect and what the story, the perspective and the way the story is told, that defines like what is psychological. Because like even in an action movie, I mean, I guess that's like the opposite end of this spectrum we're talking about. You have Slice of Life that's all internal and all a character's mental state, and then or like really pure psychological horror. You go to the grocery store, you can't find lettuce, but then you think there's a ghost following you around the grocery store, and the lettuce is haunted. I don't know, and the other end is pure action movies where the characters are not even archetypes; they're just templates. But most stories are a gradient, and it's more about what
I
side
think
of the
I might-
spectrum.
I
they
think I
fall.
might have a really easy category, right? Does it become psychological if it is just a question whether or not part of the actual story has only happened inside a character's mind?
That would be psychological, but that's not the only thing that's psychological too.
Okay.
That definitely, anything that has that is automatically psychological.
Okay.
Like people were saying Jacob's Ladder in the chat. That's an awesome movie that it all takes place in a guy's head. And that can be, that can be like it was all a dream kind of ending that people really hate. But you can also do it where it's not, where it's a little less annoying or whatever.
Yeah, like another film like that is Shutter Island. Have you
Yeah.
guys seen that? I like that film.
Yeah. And I remember not liking that ending, even though, but it is,
What did you like about the ending?
well, isn't it? It is like it was all a dream, but
It
that was
kind of
me
in
being
a
biased.
way. It was all his mental illness.
Yeah.
What?
Shutter
Yeah.
Island.
DiCaprio and
Oh,
a weird
I never seen
Scorsese movie. Okay, let me see if we can go to phase 2. of the presentation.
Yes.
It's not a slideshow, it's just a long Word document. And at the end, I have 130 Shakespeare quotes.
Brilliant.
We've
I just copy
upgraded-
pasted a
We've upgraded from
website.
slideshows to
We've
list.
got some good quotes.
Yes.
Yeah, but let me make this bigger. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I guess one of the ideas I wanted to do this show is because of this idea. Like we can pack more meaning into specifically dialogue with psychology. So this is kind of specific. Examples of psychological concepts that can affect dialogue are cope, which we were talking about earlier. It's everywhere. Everyone's doing it all the time. An example too that's interesting is David Lynch. He did Lost Highway because he was inspired by who's the football player who murdered his girlfriend?
O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, he was inspired by O.J. Simpson because he saw an interview with O.J. Simpson, and O.J. Simpson was acting like he was completely disassociated from the fact that he had done it. He created a new life, and that was like David Lynch was like, that's the only way you can do it. If you murder someone, you have to create another life, or else you go crazy. So Lost Highway is about that. It's about a guy finding out. It was just definitely a psychological thriller. It's about a guy finding out that he's living two lives because he disassociated because he killed his wife. And which is good stuff.
Allegedly, O.J. Simpson.
Allegedly.
Yeah. A lot of people back then, they're like, it's not even allegedly. Like David Lynch is like that.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you know.
I'm wondering what cope like is cope where you're willingly deceiving yourself or when you're just like automatically doing it, like you're trying to lie to yourself but you don't know, or
No,
do you know?
yeah, I think both these we do without knowing it. These ones that I wrote down, and there could be like 50, and I googled it, and there's like hundreds, but there's only a few that you're like, oh damn, that's a big one, or that comes up all the time. And one of them is kind of plausible deniability. I was like, you know what? Another word for plausible deniability is like socialization. It's like a child learning to grow up in society. One of the things you like learn without knowing it is constantly maintaining plausible deniability for everything you do.
I like that. Is you're a kid when you get in trouble and you're like, I didn't really do it. You can't prove anything.
Yeah. Like you first learn to lie and you're like, oh, this kind of might work. And then you learn like lying doesn't work. You're like, okay, that doesn't quite work. What works? What can I do?
How can I lie more intricately and more convincingly?
Yeah.
One of my favorite words out of this decade is copium.
Oh yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
great,
The chat wrote it. Yeah. And that's like, it is, I realize cope is like a good one and it can come up in dialogue or whatever, it can come up in a scene, and then it's pretty useful if it's meant to be there. Kind of, I think that's kind of part of what I'm thinking of is like, if you can identify that there actually is like a psychological like thing going on in a scene, then you can either redraft it or maybe it happens as you're writing, but that will make the scene better pretty much every time, whatever it is. And like in the chat, they were saying it could be like that one of the characters is a narcissist, that alone could like boost like whatever you're doing. But
someone says in the chat too, cope could be a good thing or a bad thing. Chris says in the chat, yeah, I mean, I guess the negative cope would be like denial, right?
Yeah, F in the chat says denial. Like, well, cope is what you do to reinforce your denial. And, characters are going to be in denial. There's going to be truths that they don't want to comprehend, and there's plausible deniability in that truth somewhere. So, like, if I just fudge the numbers a little bit on this topic, on this subject, I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I brought it up in another one of our shows, but there's a sort of a cheat manual I follow for tabletop games, like how to create characters or NPC or side characters quickly. And one of the items was figure out what your character besides from just like, well, what's their job, their name, surface level stuff, what they want and what they need. And this can extend to any character. That's actually a pretty good starting point, even for just a story from scratch and your main character, because those two things should not be in alignment. I think for most people, there's a little misalignment. Everybody has different wants and needs, but there has to be a misalignment. And why? Then you can start getting into, well, why they want what they want and why they aren't going for what they actually need, and what's the psychology, what happened to get them there. And that's the cope, and that's the denial, and explore how this person from their perspective would logicalize it.
Yeah. There's things like in what people do for their living or where they find themselves is like, you're on one hand, you're like, well, I don't like this, so I can either go crazy or I can learn to like this situation. So you'll find people with like forms of cope where they're kind of like, they might not even know it, but they're like justifying things that are like, it could be a relationship with abuse or whatever, where they're not ready to leave the relationship, so they're justifying.
Well, there's a whole phrase of like my truth, and the phrase my truth is absolute cope, because frustration is when your internal model of reality doesn't match the actual reality, and it creates frustration. But then if you just hide inside your own truth or whatever, and to get rid of the frustration, you just live in your own like copium denial world.
Right. Well, this is true for me, so I don't care what you say, even if it's proven I'm objectively wrong, right? That's also a very modern concept.
This is my Nietzschean generated self-reality, and nothing you can say is gonna damage it.
I hate millennials.
Metal Movie says Myers-Briggs is a cool way to build a team books. It can give personality contrast between the group.
Yes. There's a lot of these cheats. I mean, I think we also kind of delved into it, but I will talk about Myers-Briggs forever because I have all my characters statted out, not just in like Pathfinder stats, but I have their Myers-Briggs personality types. But my 4 main characters, I kind of also took the approach. It was kind of coincidental, but it turned out really cool because it's like you can theme your characters after, the 4 seasons or like different elements, and that's sort of a good starting point for if you have a team. So anyways, the Myers-Briggs is a great sort of baseline to start out.
Yeah. Alex VRB says, I hate millennials, Millennial Irene. I want to point out that that level of hypocrisy is very endearing in general.
No, I also hate myself.
Yeah, everyone is hypocritical, and a little bit of self-loathing is hilarious. So,
exactly.
Yeah, bring it on. Cool. So going down a little bit is kind of another way to apply psychological stuff specifically to dialogue is if your dialogue houses a psychological concept, it will automatically have like subtext. It'll automatically be a little bit deeper and richer than if it didn't. So those kind of things are always good to add them if you can, or if you have a scene where they can come up. And there's an example, because we talked about sales last time on my channel, but I don't even know if this came up, but there's a thing called thinking past the sale. It's a sales technique. And that can come up in dialogue, just as an example of how a line of dialogue can house like 2 ideas instead of just one kind of. And that's what thinking past the sale is. And so the example is, there could be a million, and this is cheesy, but if it's a guy and a girl, they're studying for the bar exam, they're like lawyers in school, and the guy says, sir, are we going back to my place or yours after dinner? However cheesy the line is, it is psychologically charged because it is thinking past the sale. The line holds an implication that they will be going to dinner together. This idea is not mentioned, but it's suggested, making the line more rich with meaning, even if it's cheesy. And then like the girl, like she would either like kind of roll with it, or she would be like, I reject the premise of your statement, because we're not going to go to dinner.
Right.
Yeah. So rejecting the premise is also a good like thing.
That's a great manipulation tactic too. Like the whole kind of hazing thing where you're like, well, so when did you stop beating your wife? Like questions like that.
Yeah.
You could get people really upset because it's about what you're implying.
Yeah, it's all the implication stuff. So that's always like good tricks to build a lot behind the dialogue. So then I have an example from Shakespeare. And the line is, the lady doth protest too much, methinks. And And this line is like famous and everyone cites it. It's awesome. I love it. But it's kind of a psychological thing. You know, you can use it where obviously if someone's protesting too much, it means kind of like they're guilty or they're kind of like, you know, they're like affected by it and kind of protest, like whatever. They like,
Right. It's almost accusing the other person of thinking past the sale, because the person you're saying is that's talking too much has given themselves up by talking too much. So it's kind of the reverse of that first point.
yeah. But so what's funny about this though, and I'm pretty sure this is like a funny thing about Shakespeare is like this line is like kind of meta because she's saying it. He puts on a play to try and catch this dude who's married his mom in real life that he hates and he thinks killed his dad.
Right.
So he puts on a play about a guy killing his dad and marrying his mom. So there's a play version of her mom that she's talking about because he asks her in real life, what do you think about the play? And she says, I think the version of me protests too much. So she's accusing his writing of herself. She's accusing him of being a bad writer and writing her poorly, which is just hilarious. So like however long that took me to explain it, that's how rich that line of dialogue is. Like that line of dialogue is packed with like almost like a whole page of thoughts and meanings and context behind it. And that I think Shakespeare gets off on that. He can definitely do a lot of that and it's pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you do that stuff in your own writing, do you sometimes worry people won't really pick up on the stuff you've embedded in it? Like, does it feel like a risk sometimes, or?
Yeah, good question. I wondered that about this because I'm like, there's no way that's people are catching that on the first read through, like ever. But I think you get the gist of it. Like, if you're watching the play, you get that she's protesting that she's portrayed poorly in the play, and she's kind of making fun of Hamlet a little bit, which is kind of endearing. It makes her kind of likable through that.
Play within a play, for sure. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying, Jake, where I wonder that sometimes where it's like, oh, I have this little thing here. It's like, is this going to explode into someone's mind and then they understand this little seed that I planted? And I mean, when you realize that they do, like if they're reviewing it or something, it makes the payoff for yourself even better. It's like, they got this, you know? So
Yeah.
I think you shouldn't let that hinder you from putting stuff like that in.
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to wonder what's more valuable for the reader. What would they appreciate more?
I realized that in my experience, because I kind of worried about this in the beginning as well, and I think in a way I was also, it was partially like I was doubting if I could write something complex, and also I think I hadn't really found my audience yet, so I was doubting if people would really read that much into it, because there's the audience that's like the webtoons audience, and they like really just simple stories. But I've learned to really trust the readership, especially the readership here, and like because comics people are nerds, and especially people who are into like collectors comics like what we're making, they're going to read, like we want to deliver something that's quality and people can has rereading value. And what I've learned is the audience is smart, and it's better to assume that they're smarter and perhaps even smarter than yourself, and write and review your work and revamp it as much as possible and tell things by implication, because even if people don't catch it on the first read, they'll go back again. And I love in storytelling when I will watch a movie or a story or any sort of media, and I'll love it, but I don't know why. And then I'll think about it or read a forum and look at why other people love it. And like I'll come to a realization on my own. Oh, this is why I like it, because there was this implied thing. There was it was like something was signifying, hinting at something that it was by implication. There you go. That's the word, Dart.
Yeah,
implication. Yeah. And for example, I remember I was talking about Peter Pan a while ago, because a new disastrous movie, but I rewatched the older versions and I realized how brilliant it was that they had Hook and the father. The symbolism in that story is so rich, and those two roles are usually played by the same actor, but it's also those roles exemplify the terrifying parts about adulthood. And then Pan and Hook are sort of the tug of war between being a child and being an adult. Anyways, I'm getting too into it, but people are smart and they will pick up on these things, and you should just let that happen.
Yeah, like I think one of the best ways you can use this stuff is potentially set up some payoffs. Say later on in this story, there was going to be an actual argument between like that guy and that woman about like, you just don't think I'm a good writer, do you? That could happen a lot later in the film. If you sprinkled a few of those things where it's implied that she doesn't think his writing is very good through those kind of like embedded confessions within those sentences, like if you sprinkled a few of those in, I think it would subconsciously set the reader up to later on believe in the argument they had later. Even though they perhaps didn't notice it overtly, it's like later on they just believe in that argument more because they would have subconsciously picked up on all those little like doubts that she had.
Yeah, you kind of track in the battle of wits going on. Even I think this line too, it's like his mom, it makes her really likable because she's kind of taking the piss out of her son, which is hilarious. And it's a good kid relationship kind of, because she's not really saying like your play sucks. She's like saying I'm not too fond with how you wrote me is kind of what she's saying, which is kind of funny. Yeah, so we can keep going. Is that?
I found this, it's probably better when we were saying should you do it or not. I think it's actually kind of like better to try at least and do it a little bit, because like it's not going to get in the way and people would pick up on it, like as long as it's not really obtuse and causing problem, like make confusing people constantly. Like if it's just sprinklings in, there are people that do pick up on it and it does make it a lot more valuable for them.
Yeah,
I think tying this into how I think it's also more realistic, especially if you're talking about dialogue, and this is something I've been trying to improve myself. Instead of sort of having usually when you write the first draft of dialogue, I don't know if you guys have this experience, but it's sort of like very just like purely functional, and it's not really tailored to how that character would speak. And then you go do different iterations and figure out how would this person say this thing, and think about the way we actually say things in real life. A lot of the times we're not saying what we actually want because we're afraid of exposing ourselves, or we don't know how to express what we actually want to say, or for some other psychological reasons. And that ties into what you want and what you need. And it happens all the time in real dialogue. So if you apply that to especially your dialogue writing, that makes your characterization much better.
Yeah, like,
like you don't want them saying what they want, because nobody does that, and that's like dumb if they do. They'll
say what they think they need to say to get what they want.
Exactly.
People never. And that is lensed by their inaccurate view of the world, like their wound or like their misaligned stuff. Like they think that's what they got to say, even if it isn't how much they're actually going to get it.
Even in this example with the mom saying the lady doth protest too much, it's like what she's actually saying. Like if you wrote the boring version of the dialogue, she would say like, "Oh, I'm not that fond with how you wrote me in that plot or in your story there, like whatever." And instead he has her say, "The lady doth protest too much, methinks," which is like became quite a famous line throughout the ages. Because it's so what this gets into a little bit of tangent sort of, but it's like universal truths are super relatable and super psychological. And a lot of the famous quotes are like a little on the nose, but these could all be applied to any dialogue or scene to make it like a better scene. And so like even the lady doth protest too much, that's kind of a universal truth that like people that are guilty talk too much, and so it's cool that Shakespeare just like pulls that out of his hat, and it's not even the point of the line really, but then that's
an interview tactic where you want to get someone to confess is just sit with them and don't really say anything, because they'll feel compelled to fill the air.
Those criminal interview, there's a lot of channels like that on YouTube. They're fascinating, and I think if you want to write a guilty person, just watch a lot of those videos and you'll see like the whole range of how people with like different weird psychopathies act when they're confronted. But it's kind of like the spouse who keeps on accusing their spouse of cheating, and it's because they're the ones who are cheating, but they keep on checking like their husband's phone or something else because you're a guilty bitch.
Do you want to know a psychological thing that I tie into that, by the way? If you act a certain way so that person is cheating, their brain subconsciously knows that cheating is on the table and people cheat. You know what I mean? So like they're constantly looking for evidence for that. Whereas if they weren't cheating, it wouldn't be a concept that they're really contemplating as much. So they wouldn't be looking up and picking up on stuff.
Yeah, and another level of that is they want to absolve themselves of something they know they're doing is wrong. They know they're doing what they're doing is self-indulgent, so they want to be convinced that, well, I'm not the only terrible person here.
It's a way you can apply it to your own life is if you're worried about people gossiping about you behind your back and stuff, see if you're gossiping about other people and like stop, and you'll notice, like I've done this, I've some other people I know have tried this, like as soon as they've stopped worrying about it as much because it's like off the table.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes up in these Shakespeare quotes, and that's what it's like a little funny is it seems like he just says the universal truth, and that is the famous quote, and I'm like, that doesn't necessarily work to apply it today to your dialogue, but just knowing the universal truth totally helps. So there, and the thing is, there's like a million of them, but they're all relatable, and that's how you know. But like one I wrote is Murphy's Law, universal truth. Everyone can relate to it, even if whether or not it's real. Everyone can relate to it. Little sisters are annoying. That's like a universal truth, etc. No, but I just know.
Oh, my sister's great.
Yeah.
She's annoying sometimes.
Yeah.
You have to say that.
Here's a Shakespeare quote. I'll start going through these potentially kind of fast, and if we see one that we like, we'll slow down.
I love this one. I'm going to quote this in a future Lost Pages. It's
Yeah. So all the world's a stage, and the men and women merely players. They have their exits and entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. This is the part I was like, that's a universal truth. One man in his time plays many parts.
Definitely.
Everyone can relate to that, I think.
This is actually pretty long. Like it actually goes through the 7 ages in the quote, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I like that. Are you kind of connecting those universal
What is the 7 ages thing?
Truths in it? It goes from like throughout a life. But do you guys know like any of these things we've talked about, like cope, denial? Have you ever written them into, probably not consciously, but characters, like now that we're going over these things, can you see any of them in your creative materials?
I do, but because I do mostly comedic stuff, it means you exaggerate everything. So like if you had a character that was trying to hide stuff, you would make them like overly talkative. I would probably pull it. It'd be harder to pull off in something more subtle, but I don't know.
I do, but let me see, what can I actually reveal? Well, I guess I've already revealed this part. I actually found that my characters who are giant assholes are easier to write. I don't know if that says something about myself, but I think part of it is just because, well, it's very easy to get into they're assholes because they're masking something, and that's a character flaw, and that's really easy to just realize that, well, this person will always act abrasive and be defensive in these positions, and they have an ego, but like you just have to figure out what they're defensive about, depending on the individual. But for example, a big part of Fiendish and Casimir's story is he has a lot of survivor's guilt from being the sole survivor of the demon attack on his hometown. And I felt like the idea of being the sole survivor of a demon attack, that's a bit of a trope, but I decided I would commit to it and really think about how that would affect a person. So it starts out as something you might have seen before, kind of similar to Demon Slayer and a few other things, but because it feels so real, it shouldn't be a trope, and that's my aim. So he has survivor's guilt, and how does he face it? He thinks that going back to his hometown and figuring out what the demons are would like solving the truth and solving where the demons come from and avenging his family would make everything better, but does it? And we'll have to keep on reading, but I want to go deeper than that. It turns out it doesn't really solve everything, and he figures out later, I can't spoil it, but he has to do more than that. He has to actually change something in himself and change his worldview to find peace. And Ragna is a character that is, I can spoil more because she's not, her arc isn't as integral to the story, and she is very entitled and kind of bitchy and like arrogant, but it's for a reason. It's because she feels the pressure of inheriting this really important lineage, and she has all this weight on her shoulders, so she thinks she has to act better and be better than everyone else in order to honor her heritage and live up to this great thing. And like she's kind of projecting it to as a defense mechanism, if that makes sense. Yeah, but there's something underneath, like she's hiding the fact that she's insecure about if she can actually make it.
Yeah, that's cool. And that'll help you write all her lines of dialogue. It could color everything she says, but she won't say anything, on the nose, and it gives the double meaning to all the dialogue.
I love writing her. She's so much fun.
I think for me, like Cope is, especially with this new Lost Pages, is a huge part of Crimstone, because she's literally living with the coping mechanism, which is her imaginary friend, Crim. So that's her like safety blanket, right? And we embellish that as she grows older, where he's literally like this superhero to her that she almost grows to need because she gets her powers from him being around, and that covers her scars that she has. In the first story, we saw her without him growing up and the trauma she went through. But in this new one, I basically wrote the main plot about taking that coping mechanism away, and who is she without that now, right? And he's trapped in her head fighting all these monsters, and she has to deal with reality and the evils that she was able to easily take care of in when he was around. So that character is very much the psychological character in that series.
Yeah, this theme fits your character very well, Jazz and Crim.
Yeah, and I think that it helps it resonate extra strong and has that relatability. Not that we can relate to like having an imaginary friend, but we can relate to the psychological concept and the coping and stuff.
You guys don't have
17 imaginary friends.
Yeah. I was telling you guys here and there that I've been trying to write this like little short script about a writer and his wife talking about whether or not he should kill a character in his book.
Yes.
And I ended up, I started redrafting it, and I'm getting a little more psychological, and it's getting better. It feels like it's unlocking kind of, but part of it is I'm making more and more fun of writers in a hypocritical, self-loathing way. And that's like pretty funny. And then I have the guy, like the other thing, I have him humble bragging all the time, which is kind of you could call that a quote, but the humble bragging is kind of hilarious. But it is like, like Jake's saying, like, I almost don't want it to be a comedy, but people chuckle if I tell them the humble brags. And I'm like, I got to find this balance where I don't want it to be like a comedy. But like a line, like he'd be like, he tells his wife, he's like, I want you to know that I couldn't do it without you. All these awards mean nothing because I get to talk to you at night. It's so great just having someone to talk to, something like that, And she's like rolling her eyes at it internally, but
when it comes to comedy, comedy is like surprise, right? Like the three steps of like a joke. You have the punch, the setup, the pre-setup, and the punchline, and the third one is like the reframe surprise, right? So like you are trying to reframe something. So like, but it can be interesting instead. I don't know what makes just making something interesting. It can cross over into comedy if you're doing it a certain way, I guess. I'm wondering what the difference is. like how you
Yeah,
pull it
that
back.
could
'Cause
be
the way you
another
explained it, you laugh at it, but you don't think it's overtly comedy. It's just
Yeah.
interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a maybe we've talked about this, but it's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. The director who did that movie, he was mad that people were laughing at it. He's like, "It's not funny. Stop laughing." And everyone's like, "Dude, that's one of the best movies ever made." And he's like, "I don't care. Too many people are laughing."
Oh, come on.
You know, and it's kind of boring, almost boring if you don't do this stuff with your characters. Because, like, okay, I'm doing a funny book, which is about a guy with a shape shifting appendage ability, and like, if he was just jumping around using the power and being super happy about it, like, haha, look at this, it would kind of be lame. So a big part of Connell is he's incredibly embarrassed about his power, and he's constantly trying to not use it in front of people and
Yeah.
like hide it. And because like there's there's some little hints in the story, like he's like he's in the woods and is like a loner. He's not like part of society. Like indicates some previous event where like his ability maybe got him into trouble. And it's like you can still do this stuff in comedy, and I think it makes it even better than if you just straight up did stuff without a character trying to hide.
Right. Well, that makes the character endearing as well, because he has something that he cannot help being embarrassed about, you know?
Mm-hmm. It's sort of, I think the humor you're using in Carnal is like subverting people's expectations of what every situation would be in an absurd way. It's a slightly absurdist humor because it's like he's saving this girl and then, well, what happens? He gets a giant boner and the boner starts forming shapes and you don't expect that and it's hilarious. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's definitely ridiculous.
Yeah, I think comedy is super psychological, though. It pretty much that's almost all it is you're playing with what's in people's heads.
In order to surprise people, you have to guide them in one way first, and then take them in a different direction.
Yeah,
A very specific one that reframes it in a certain way to make them laugh.
Yeah, and the idea of things being relatable can be harnessed for comedy super strong. Like I heard a funny quote from Jerry Seinfeld, and they're like, "How do you write jokes?" He's like, "Well, sometimes it's not even a joke. I just start with like an observation that's kind of funny. Like, you know, in public bathrooms," and they're like, "Yeah." He's like, "You know how they have the metal panels that form the stalls of the public bathrooms?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, the gaps between the panels, they're too wide." And everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that's fucking true. That's hilarious." And it's like, so that's not a joke. That's like just something that's relatable. And
Right.
That's one of the things of humor is specificity. Some people, like if someone say, "Oh man, I just went to the restaurant," like an aspect of humor could be, "Oh man, I just went to the Davy Jones fry and spry and got the double deal on the mega meal." Like, see, like you laugh a little bit, but it's like if you get, sometimes you can make stuff more comedic if you just add more needless specificity, which is like him pointing out that this one thing that's like a needlessly specific aspect to reality that he's highlighting in the gap between the metal panels in the toilets.
Yeah.
Or a lot of comedy is pointing out the obvious, but just in a almost, what you call it, socially not normally acceptable way. It's like, because a lot of comedy is telling the truth in a way that people don't expect. Like, usually you're too polite to say it. That's a fun
Alleviating cope.
Yeah, it could be a little bit of that relatable universal truth kind of thing. The elephant in the room, everyone loves that, and that's not always necessarily funny, but yeah. So a few more quotes. Romeo and Juliet, good night, parting is such sweet sorrow. I feel like parting is such sweet sorrow is a universal truth. So and it's like you could, Shakespeare has Juliet literally say the universal truth, which is kind of like maybe that's part of his genius. He just was dropping these like it wasn't no thing, like super easy. But the rest we have to think for hours just to think of one universal truth. He's just like dropping them. But you could write a scene with this universal truth being the psychological charge of the scene that guides what the characters say. They could actually say whatever they want, and the relatable psychological truth is still there, but they are deliberately delaying and prolonging their departure. And that we've all seen that or can kind of relate to that idea too. Be 12 from the 12th night. Be not afraid of greatness. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. Machiavelli's The Prince based a chapter on that quote, I think.
I'm gonna use that quote for a very inappropriate situation.
Great
Nice.
quote.
The thrust upon them part, huh?
Yeah, like
I knew it.
there's a character like how you have like the village idiot. Well, there's like a
Oh,
the village rapist. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
God.
somehow that's like a fun way of like one of those kind of characters justifying some of us have greatness thrust upon them. Okay.
Yeah. So then this one from Hamlet. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. This is my favorite quote of all of them that I read. This is my favorite because it's like, I don't know if this is like any universal truth in there exactly, but that's super relatable, that talking to like people that think they know everything. And I love Hamlet just like telling him off like really succinctly, and it's like so endearing. It makes me really like Hamlet that he would just tell his friend, like kind of like dismiss him a little bit, but kind of like put him in his place, but in a kind of funny way. That's a good line, and just that it's definitely relatable though, the situation of dealing with people who think they know everything. And that line could come up like that line itself could be universal truth just because it could come up in a million situations when you're talking to people. Although saying it would be pretentious potentially. It's not enough to speak, but to speak true.
So what's
Well,
the function of these truths? What's the function of these truths like in relation to what we were talking about? Like,
yeah, it's like psychological relatability, universal truths relatability, and then it's related to dialogue, and then these characters are all exhibiting I don't know, like there's definitely like a psychological thing going on here, but I don't know exactly what it is. But
yeah, they all seem like the calling out a character, calling out another character, and highlighting their cope or something. You know what I mean? Highlighting their
yeah, it is. It's like dialogue or whatever. If I lose my honor, I lose myself. Kind of just
Mine. If I lose mine honor.
Oh yeah. So now some Napoleon quotes. We'll go through a few of these. Never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. That was Napoleon. He probably just read The Art of War, but I don't know if maybe that's not in The Art of War.
I don't know if that's
What's
that?
Napoleon?
Courage isn't having the strength to go on. It's going on when you don't have strength.
yeah, baby.
Oh, George R. R. Martin totally ripped that off.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Napoleon, he's like got everything here. It's like it reminded me a little bit of Shakespeare. I'm like, oh, he's dropping universal truths, but he's just
He
not
probably
writing.
stole these from other people too. Everyone steals shit.
Yeah, so I'm so wise.
Yeah. And some of these, I'm like, he's the earliest that I've seen.
Well,
Some of, I'm sure you can.
That last one's like Mike Tyson. There's like a YouTube short of him going around saying that success is not doing what you love, it's doing what you hate like you love it. Mike Tyson's pretty he's a very well-read man, which is pretty
And they
ironic.
have to say that again, but in his voice.
I don't think I can.
Napoleon Bonaparte. In politics, stupidity is not a handicap. That's modern. Kind of Trumpian a little bit.
Some things never change.
Yeah. History is a set of lies agreed upon.
I like that.
If you want a thing done well, do it yourself. I'm like, Napoleon said that?
Wait, no, my mom said that.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought my mom said that.
And I'd be like, well, I don't want my room to be tidy anyway, so I guess I won't fucking do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nothing is more difficult and therefore more precious than to be able to decide. That's got sort of a running theme. He has a word for people that he calls them sovereigns, which kind of means elites, but he doesn't like intellectuals. So it's like a step above intellectuals are sovereigns. He has this word for it. They're kind of
Just
like,
bros.
yeah, it's like princes and shit or whatever, like leaders, whatever.
Nobility.
Yeah, and he's like, if you're a sovereign, then blah blah blah. He has like rules for them that are different than everyone.
That's what the elves call you in Warcraft 3. My sovereign, when you tell them what to do.
Oh,
I mean,
nice.
that's like your king and stuff, right?
Yeah.
My liege.
Yeah, my liege.
Yeah, that was a
My
good.
liege. We need to chop down more trees for more
Uh-huh.
lumber.
Job's done. Classic peasant.
History is written by the winners. Yep. Take time to deliberate, but when the time for action comes, stop thinking and go in.
Go ahead.
That.
Wait, what's the other one? Yeah.
Impossible is a word to be found only in the dictionary of fools. That's Trumpian.
I like it.
A leader is a dealer in hope. That's Obama. The only victories which leave no regret are those which are gained over ignorance. That's deep, kind of.
Leave no regret.
I don't know if it's like these are good quotes, but a couple of them, like the leader is a dealer in hope, that doesn't necessarily universally apply. But I can see how it can make sense.
Yeah, thanks, Obama, for your shit quote.
That's part of it, because I think there are people who they're very inspiring, but they're not good leaders because you have to know how to manage people, and that's not for everybody. But yeah, I get the point.
A woman laughing is a woman conquered.
Yeah, baby.
Oh, that one. That's a quote that I heard. Ralph Garman used to say this: "Make her laugh, make her breakfast." That's what it said.
That does sound like a good deal. I approve. It's all it wants.
Yeah, like I think Alex VRB made fun of me earlier, saying like people develop psychological stuff in relation to like trauma or whatever, like making jokes, Jake. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, if you're making people laugh, you're eschewing a bunch of other emotions. Like if they're laughing, they're not judging you or something. You know what I mean? Like
They could be laughing at you.
Yeah, but if you own it, then you kind of like turn that around too.
Disarming. It's disarming.
Yeah, so like that one is like the ultimate way to disarm a woman is to make her laugh.
Well, that's also psychological, because that if you're laughing at someone but they don't let it get to them, that shows confidence, and then it's almost like you disarm the people who are mocking you.
Yeah, like Alex says, you can win an argument, but you got to make them laugh. Like if you're in an argument with someone, that was the ultimate thing when you were a fucking kid, right? You're like, your parents are having a go at you, but if you manage to like make them smile, you're like, ah!
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Oh, that would never happen. Oh,
Yeah.
more mad.
You're bringing
It's
up
like you're not taking this seriously enough.
No, if I could make my mom laugh, I knew I got away with whatever. Like it's like a Homer quote. Like he does something fucked up, and then he makes Marge laugh. He goes, "Ha ha! You laughed. I'm off the hook."
That's why you learned humor, because that was your get out of jail free card.
Yeah, no, for real, 10,000%. Yes.
You don't reason with intellectuals; you shoot them. That's another.
Shit!
That's the second best quote in the whole thing, I think.
I would say that's a little much, but you have our intellectuals nowadays.
Yeah, it's just hilarious. I don't know. It's
in
good
Minecraft.
Stuff. Yeah.
And that takes me back to something I contemplated, as if like, say, if the person who embodies an idea, if you leave them living, that idea will never die. Like if you're trying to fight with like some kind of culture war, like it's almost like why some people want to push people to kill themselves. It's like, I need to make you go away permanently, or otherwise like your ideas will always live on and come back and be spread.
It's like Stalin, right?
Yeah. Nod Saban says, Nora, what font do you use? I think I just use Final Draft, and this is not the font. Yeah, this is just he's a not Sabit's a designer. I don't know exactly what he's asking, but this is just copied and pasted into a Google Doc. So I don't know what these fonts are. The best way to keep one's word is not to give it. Men are moved by two levers only: fear and self-interest. That's a universal truth. Like you could.
And then the mysterious third lever, much lower down.
Vagina.
Yeah.
No,
He
that's-
talks about that too. There's some funny quotes about that. He who fears being conquered is sure of defeat. The reason most people fail instead of succeed is they trade what they want most for what they want at the moment. That's the want versus need kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Want most of what they want at the moment, but if you're a writer, they don't even know what they want most.
This guy
what
said
they
a
need
picture's
most.
worth 1,000 words.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's
not
Napoleon.
Him. This is bullshit. Narwhal just went and picked a bunch of quotes on it and then
made
just
them all
assigned them
Napoleon.
all to Napoleon.
No, Napoleon said it.
He
What
was
else
quoting
could
someone
say it?
else saying it. So it's like, yeah, it came from him.
Napoleon said it first because he was in exile and he looked. He had this painting on his wall and he goes, "Huh, a picture's worth 1,000 words." It's like, that's good. I'm gonna write that down.
In this very conversation, we have all said that and can now change that name from Napoleon Bonaparte to any one of our names because we said it.
Because history is written by the winners, which Napoleon also said.
Let's
There we
see.
He decided.
allegedly said.
But he didn't he fucking lose?
He won pretty
I
hard.
don't know. Yeah, I don't know Napoleon.
He won a lot more than
I tell you something. I cut a lot of quotes that were like not fit for print or whatever. But and a lot of them are like hypocritical in fun ways. Like he's all over the place. So he's like a lot of them are Christianity. He's like
Yeah, man, Napoleon was a loser. Napoleon's forces were defeated by the Prussians and the British in the Battle of Waterloo. So they eat shit.
Yeah.
So,
And he was like,
British-
you know what? I'm gonna say all these quotes from me. And even though I'm the loser, I'm gonna still try and rewrite history by attributing all these quotes to myself.
Yeah.
I have facts. Fact checkers have been on this. Napoleon died in 1921. Sorry, 1821. 1821.
Thank you.
1821. The first photograph was taken in 1827.
Oh.
6 years later.
So he didn't quite make it. His dream was to get photographed and he didn't make it.
Oh, how could he say a picture's worth 1,000 words when there weren't pictures?
There were no
Oh.
images at all.
Well,
Oh my
wouldn't
gosh.
Wouldn't
No,
he say painting, or wouldn't he say?
No.
Yeah,
He
the
would still say
picture was a word back then. Pictures.
Guess what, Phil? He
It's
didn't
all,
say
he was
photograph.
probably saying ho 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 ho. That's what his actual words were.
El picture is worth 1,000 words.
Les
Yeah.
He didn't
thousand
say all of these
words.
in French accent. You're getting it wrong. You're misquoting him.
Alex BRB says there's nothing to fear but fear itself. Napoleon Bonaparte, 1933. Carol, you almost made it to the bottom of the list before you were caught. No, I swear. I thought about telling you guys, like, I thought about saying before, like, some of these quotes are fake. See if you could pick out which ones, because that would like make it a game. I was like, nah, they're all real. But we'll just go. 10 people who speak make more noise than 10,000 who are silent, aka Twitter 2023. It is the cause, not the death, that makes the martyr. It's a pretty good one. If you build an army of 100 lions and their leader is a dog, in any fight, the lions will die like a dog. But if you build an army of 100 dogs and their leader is a lion, all dogs will fight as a lion.
I have just noticed at what position the scroll thing is on the side. We are only a third way through. I
All
just
right.
noticed.
We're gonna be here for a while.
I was like, you know what? Let's do the psychology stuff. Then it's 2 hours worth of quotes, baby.
That's why you guys got to let me just read them. No.
Okay, all right, shut up.
No thoughtful
This is
response.
quality entertainment. Me reading quotes to you guys while you guys work.
Oh, educate us.
Hope the chat enjoys it. These are real Napoleon Bonaparte quotes. Napoleon Bonaparte is not my hero. I want to stress that. It is not necessary to bury the truth. It is sufficient merely to delay it until nobody cares. God is on the side with the best artillery. That's a pretty good one.
Mhm. I like that.
Envy is a declaration of inferiority. That's a universal truth.
Yes. That's
The
true.
fool has one great
Wait, are we
advantage over
supposed to
romantic sex.
deconstruct any of these novels? Are we just supposed to listen to the quotes?
What are you saying?
Are we supposed to deconstruct any of these? Are we just
Are
supposed to
there
listen
any
to
that
the
you
quotes?
feel possessed to comment on? We can go back. What do you want to talk about? Envy?
The one about God being on the side of the
Oh yeah,
the
I like
best
this one.
artillery was interesting.
This one is like fun. I don't know. It's just a good little fun little quote. Just a fun little quote.
I wanted to
Well,
expand
if
on
you wanna-
that, but also I realized we have 500 more to go.
No, we don't have to do all 500. But it's just like, the idea is, it's if you think of God as destiny, it's like God is with the better person. The better side is winning. And it's like, no. The person with the biggest stick is gonna win potentially.
Yeah. There's another quote from him further down. He goes, "Let the artillery just do their thing. They're a rambunctious bunch." Something like that. Like he really likes the artillery, or they're like spoiled brats because they know they're the most important. So and they have to be treated differently. The fool has one great advantage over man in a sense. He's always satisfied with himself. Strategy.
Envy is the declaration of inferiority. That's the whole Pepsi position thing. For years in marketing, you had like Pepsi was always comparing itself to Coke, and you have the concept of the Pepsi position, right? Like if you're constantly comparing yourself to something else, the Coke doesn't compare itself to Pepsi. The winner doesn't compare itself to other people.
Yeah, I can see that applying to many things.
Napoleon is the ultimate plagiarist, Dimwitted Chicken says. Or just like the best quote writer of all time. How did he do it? I don't know.
He's so smart. Why did he lose?
I feel like I want to know more context around him losing.
Too busy writing
He's
quotes.
famous for a reason because he
Because he attacked Russian Winter.
He
Yeah.
was too busy writing quotes instead of strategizing his battles.
Yeah.
properly.
Yeah, strategy is the art of making use of time and space. I'm less concerned about the latter than the former. Space we can recover, lost time never. Ooh, deep. Friends must always be treated as if one day they might be enemies. Let that be a lesson to you three.
Oh, no worries. I've already been doing that.
Oh my!
Yeah. In war, as in prostitution, amateurs are often better than professionals. That's the third lesson. That's a good one. You guys break that down while I pee. I gotta pee.
Let's break down the.
Were we supposed to elaborate on our experience with prostitution?
Yeah, I got
Thanks,
solicited
Normal.
by two prostitutes in Las Vegas at about 4 in the morning, maybe 5:30 in the morning, coming out of a Denny's.
How did it go, Phil?
Everybody's waiting.
I told them that I was already going to have a good time with the buddies that I was walking down the street with, so I didn't need them.
I was walking around at a similar time in the morning once, nowhere near a Denny's because we don't have one over here. And this woman walked up to me and tried to fucking touch my dick and said, "Are you looking for business?" And I was like, no. Walked off.
Well,
They'll just come right up and fucking try and grab your dick, Irene.
yeah, I don't know. I guess that's what hoes do.
Hoes be hoeing. I don't understand
I
how.
have not had prostitutes walk up to me to solicit my business. Strangely enough.
We don't have a dick for them to try and grab.
Well, nowadays, how do people know?
How?
I don't know.
How is it?
Moving on.
How is an amateur? Okay, I'm trying to pick apart what he actually means by this. Like, is an amateur unpredictable?
Is it like
No, they got
for virgins kind of thing?
Yeah, they're all bright-eyed and they want to get it done.
Yeah, they're like trying for reals. You know what
They're
I mean?
not jaded.
Oh, they're not dead inside yet.
Right, they're not jaded.
Right. This kind of is the philosophy behind why we were why they were picking kids for battle leaders at Ender's Game is because it's like they're not jaded, they're not clouded by fear that experienced adults would have.
And they don't have the survivorship bias.
Right, yeah. Yeah, isn't that weird? Remember being a kid and just not having any concept of your own mortality? Just doing stupid shit and being
It's
surprised.
great.
Surprised. It was
I
kind of great,
I
but
broke
also
so many arms and legs.
I don't think that means what you think that means, Napoleon. He said that.
You said that too.
The best cure for the body is a quiet mind, Napoleon. That's a good one.
That's really, I like that.
War
I'm gonna-
is 90% information.
Okay.
I'm gonna say that next time I want somebody to shut up.
Yeah. Anarchy is the stepping stone to absolute power. Nice one.
Is that
Napoleon.
implying that if the
Ooh.
person doesn't shut up, you're gonna beat them up?
I mean, that wasn't what I was implying. I was
No, but that
implying this is
quote.
what's good for you, for your health. Shut
Yeah,
the
like
fuck
for
up.
your health, shut the fuck up.
I wasn't saying that, but no, you
No, it's
you
just
can
an-
interpret it that way.
It's an interesting way to lens the quote.
Yeah.
Look, we're almost halfway. The people to fear are not those who disagree with you. but those who
This is
disagree
the
with
battle
you
of
are
attrition
cowardly
stream.
to let you know.
I wasn't expecting this when we started. Rolls in the background. He was like, I have a few Napoleon quotes, so
Just a few.
Just a
Just
few.
finishing strong with 300 Shakespeare quotes we haven't got to yet.
Ah, I forgot. Okay.
We might save some for next time.
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by priests who repeat
Get ready for part
incessantly-
2, bitches.
This is a good one. I am surrounded by priests who repeat incessantly that their kingdom is not of this world, and yet they lay their hands on everything they can get. That's just like hypocrisy that's kind of relatable. Good in stories, good writing, whatever.
Mhm.
Religious
have-
leaders love gold.
Yeah. To have a right estimate of a man's character, we must see him in misfortune. Napoleon said that. It's a good one.
I like
Yeah.
it.
If
He
you
who
don't
knows
deserve
how
me
to
at my
flatter-
best, if you don't summon at my best, you don't deserve me at my. If you can't, just fucking
Handle
fuck
me
off
at my
now.
worst. You don't deserve me at my best.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, I think that works. He who knows how to flatter also knows how to slander. Jake, weren't you talking about that earlier? So you ripped off Napoleon.
Totally.
he who smelt it dealt it. Napoleon.
I have a dream, Napoleon Bonaparte. The wise words.
This one's Shakespeare, and I literally have that further down the list. So no Danky Frankie. I base my calculation on the expectation that luck will be against me. Sounds like Murphy's Law. Napoleon invented Murphy's Law.
Can you go back to the flattery one and the shit and the so he who knows how to flatter also knows how to slander. So it's like it just made me remember a concept of like the more intelligent a species is, the more capable it is of evil because it knows like the complexity of horror it can. I fucked this up. I'm trying to.
Are you stoned?
Yeah.
So stoned.
You're like falling asleep.
Well, it's about kind of knowing what gets to people. It's like, oh, I know what you place importance on. So it's like if somebody takes pride in their athletic ability, so you know how to flatter them to their face by saying, "Oh, you're so athletic," and blah blah. But then to slander them and make the rumors get to them, you know, to attack the same thing.
Well, can you have evil without intelligence?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, is evil like the purposeful infliction of torment, or is it just bad things?
Oh yeah, like
is
it-
nature evil for wiping out villages in a tsunami? Like,
I think you can be. There are people who are evil without being particularly calculating about it. You can have like a dumb idiot who just has zero empathy and goes around killing people, and just by chance or just because he lives in the middle of nowhere doesn't get caught until like a 30th victim. But I don't think you necessarily need intelligence. It's just selfishness mostly.
What you just described, Rini, too, is pretty creepy. That would be a good character.
Oh yeah.
Rini knows creepy.
Yeah.
I do.
I base my calculation. Nope, already got that.
yeah,
Never
sorry.
ascribe to malice, which is adequately explained by stupidity. That was Napoleon? Jeez.
That was him too. Wow.
Men who have changed the world never achieved their success by winning the chief citizens to their side, but always by stirring the masses. See, that's some Trumpian business right there.
Hmm.
Amateurs discuss tactics, professionals discuss logistics. That's one of my favorites too. I kind of thought you could base a whole comic on that one quote. It could be kind of cool.
Wait, how would you do that then? How would you do that then?
It would be, well, first what the quote kind of means, like I kind of like, it's like people love that, like that could apply to a lot of different things. Like it could kind of apply to like comics or something. There's like the thing with all the luster that anyone entering kind of likes and gets into it for. And then there's the kind of unsung stuff that's actually really important that no one cares about.
Right. I took this as kind of professionals they already know their tactics so well. They're focused on just getting it done.
Yeah, tactics they're kind of the fun part, and the logistics is cool though. Like if logistics is like, how many people can we get and keep them fed without starving? How do we get them from point A to point B? So, and that's kind of it, and then there's some other stuff, but
I had a thought of applying it to YouTube of like the amateur thinks, what is a really cool video I can make that'll go viral? And then the professional is like, how do I upload every day?
Yeah.
Yeah. For I would want to do some research, I guess, but I was like, could it be cool? Like if you plan an invasion during like when the crops are like blooming and you're just you pick like 4 huge farms that you're going to like march to and invade that way. Like you could like have spies growing food for an invasion to happen next spring. And the plan is you're going to feed the army that way or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So another example of that is the English, when they were trying to fight off against the Norse, they would attack on Saturdays because they figured out that the Norse are always bathing on Saturdays. But then when the Norse wanted to, they were more clean than everybody else because they would bathe once a week, which is stunning for Middle Ages. But when the Norse wanted to attack the English, they would attack during Mass every Sunday.
Oh yeah, they're really.
They would attack during Over Day.
We choose to go to the moon. Napoleon.
I remember that.
Wow. Thinking ahead.
You must not fight too often with one enemy, or you will teach him all your art of war. That's kind of happening with Ethan and the one guy, Patrick Tomlinson. They're becoming too familiar.
Instead of a diversity of tactics, have a diversity of enemies. It's like, if you play poker against the same person, how long is it going to take until they figure out what your fucking poker face is?
That applies to like martial arts. So there's this thing with competitive martial arts of any type where it's like the more you fight and the more famous you get, it gets harder for you to stay at the top because everybody's watching the fight and they know your tactics. So you have to continue to reinvent yourself to stay at the top.
If you're training martial arts with a friend too, if you do want to get better, it is cool that you, like me and my friend Tom, when we're doing jiu-jitsu, we would just figure out this same move that was like really OP, and then we'd have to like learn how to counter it. So then like you learn how to do the move, then you also figure out the counter. I don't know. So and that only came from fighting against the same person over and over again when you learn each other's tactics. Like it forces you to develop new ones.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. A man will fight harder for his interests than for his rights. That's kind of modern, potentially. The art of being sometimes audacious and sometimes very prudent is the secret of success. See, that's like kind of cool and kind of like, well, obviously.
Right.
Perfect picture.
A little column A, a little column B.
Yeah, it's like being the perfect mixture of good and evil. The absolute perfect mixture is the secret to success.
70% evil.
Someone's like, I didn't find success. Well, it wasn't. You didn't get the perfect mixture. Sorry.
It's like a very fancy way of saying just don't approach everything the exact same way like an idiot.
Yeah.
Napoleon Bonaparte quote.
Yeah.
Never approach every situation the exact same way. Napoleon.
Wow.
Oh, here's one about dating or sex or whatever. Love is the occupation of the idle man, the amusement of a busy one, and the shipwreck of a sovereign. So Larry used that term, the sovereign, which is like a step above
The
intellectual.
amusement of a biddy one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like as a busy person right now, love definitely feels like an amusement, a distant amusement.
Yeah.
No, the amusements are good, right?
All the single people here are sadly relating.
No, I relate. So like I'm busy and
Yeah, I like
I'm
it's a good point that
entertained.
amusement is good. It's not a negative.
Amusement's good. So like if you're a busy person, then your amusement is something you go to do to escape from your busyness, from your
Yeah.
work.
And it
Right.
probably is bad to focus on it too much if you got nothing else to do and you're like,
Right. So if you're an idle man, then you have nothing to do, and then it's like a job, right? Because it's the only thing you have going for you.
yeah.
So
Right.
the part about shipwreck of a sovereign, that's really interesting because as nobles are expected to marry for politics, not for love mostly, and that there's so many stories about elopements or love affairs just like fucking up nations because that's like the nobles have this predetermined role for them. So that's
Mm.
interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. The shipwreck of
Next week we should just read a novel. Oh,
written by Napoleon. We'll read his memoirs.
And not comment on the novel.
Next time on my channel, we will read the entirety of The Art of War in Chinese, and you will all sit
oh
through
my
it.
God.
To understand
No,
a man, you have to know what was happening in the world when he was 20. Interesting.
I'm gonna read that playwright guy's book on my next stream.
Oh no! I will leave.
Aw.
The art of war is to gain time when your strength is inferior. Your character does that, Rainy, in part 2. Not to give anything away, but it's like gaining time when your strength is inferior. That's like
Does he?
the girl does. I forget.
Oh, that's right. Oh, thank you. That's a compliment.
Yeah. An order that can be misunderstood will be misunderstood.
Get the supervillain to monologue, basically. Whilst you're in a bad position, just get your enemy to monologue, and then you can regain your strength while they're monologuing.
Yeah.
Well, if you're
you
doing a
cannot-
comedy, that would work.
Yeah, that's like goofy kind of, but it's good. You cannot lead a battle if you think you look silly on a horse. That's another really, really good one.
That's a thing for him to say.
Yeah,
I
if you
don't-
pre if
It's
you
like
pre
Ethan, that picture of Ethan, remember? On a horse?
Yeah.
Right. You need
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
able to laugh at yourself. That kind of relates to YouTube as well. I mean,
Yeah,
I
that
don't think
applies to like everything. For sure.
Yeah.
if you're predisposed with your own self-image, you're not going
Right.
to win any fights.
Men
you
are more
can't take-
easily. Or
Oh,
sorry. go ahead.
Sorry, I was saying something irrelevant.
Don't
You can't
talk,
take the-
Irene. There's more quotes to read.
No, shut up! I refuse. I'm gonna drag this as long as possible. I just want to say, okay, the point is over now. Continue reading. Thanks for reading it.
Men are more easily governed through their vices than through their virtues.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yes, that's true.
Never awake me when you have good news to announce, because with good news nothing presses. But when you have bad news, arouse me immediately, for then there is not an instant to be lost. It's pretty good.
Okay.
One should
Obvious.
never forbid what one lacks the power to prevent. I like that one. That's like parental kind of a little bit.
An alarm is like bad news, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have noticed in every campaign that I have fought that there is a key segment of time, somewhere between 13 and 15 minutes, in which the battle is won or lost. I focus on that segment of time and I win. Except that, I guess that quote's a little less cool if he like lost, or whatever.
Right. Well, I mean, this guy, you can't win all your battles, right?
Yeah, he has a quote like that too. So yeah. But I like that one about just the real important moments and recognizing them and striking. I do like that's another one you almost base a comic on kind of.
Pick your
Yeah, Phil,
battles.
you didn't think of that. He already thought of that.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw in the chat, Napoleon, one of the Napoleon quotes was "Back to Lost Pages 3."
Oh yeah, he was so prescient.
Yeah.
He really saw things.
Alongside other quotes such as "Hasta la vista, baby," Napoleon Bonaparte. And smoke me a kipper. I'll be back for breakfast. Napoleon, perfect. No one else in this panel gets that but me, Adam Kemba. But it was a great quote.
Nope.
Strong coffee, much strong coffee is what awakens me. Coffee gives me warmth, waking, and unusual force with a pain that is not without very great pleasure.
Is this
That's
supposed to give us some enlightenment? Yes, coffee's great.
That's like a advertisement for coffee. You
I
got
had my first
Cheers.
coffee today. I had my first coffee today, guys.
What, in
you
your
not had
life?
coffee prior?
Ever?
Yeah, basically. Yeah,
Are
like
you
a
that
first-
straight edge? You didn't even drink coffee ever?
I don't
well,
believe
it's
you.
not. It doesn't taste good, right?
It does
Yeah.
kind of taste like medicine.
I make it watery, so it makes me nauseous.
That's gross. I'm more of a tea, like I love matcha, right? I love the taste of grass in my mouth for some reason. But
Right, yeah.
today I heard on the radio advertisement worked. It was a Starbucks commercial for their new white chocolate macadamia cold brew. So I went, and the office got a new Jeep. We have a new Jeep office Jeep. Yeah, and so we jumped in the Jeep and went to Starbucks, and I got that.
I mean, Starbucks coffee is barely coffee, but congratulations.
But then after the coffee, I guess you have to use the bathroom after you drink coffee.
If you get
Yeah.
extra shots in that
Mhm.
coffee, it's definitely coffee. If you
I
get a
didn't
fucking
know.
It does
quadruple.
loosen you up a bit. Now you know.
Wow. The juice was loose, as they say.
You develop a resistance to it though if you drink 5 mugs like me every day.
I think this list of quotes is literally giving me a headache, so I'm gonna be right back and get some headache.
You're stressing all of us out.
It's all to talk about coffee. He needs a coffee. I got a few more. We might not do the last of the Shakespeare quotes, but there's some
Aw.
Napoleon ones I want to read still.
No, we have to commit.
Yeah, or we could just keep going forever.
Yeah.
Leave the artillerymen alone. They are an obstinate lot. See, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Over preparation is the foe of inspiration.
Yes, that applies to writing. Yeah, I know a writer friend who, I think they're actually a really good writer, but they're focused a lot on structure. I actually know some people like that. Have you guys met people like that who are so focused on doing things the right way and having the script perfect before they do any thumbnails that nothing ever
Yeah.
happens?
Yeah, the paralysis of analysis.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah, just jump in and learn as you go. Chess is too difficult to be a game and not serious enough to be a science or an art. Spoken like someone who plays a lot of chess, I bet. Otherwise, he would keep his mouth shut.
I keep telling my girlfriend that I want to learn and also play chess against her, and she's not
You
happy.
don't know how to play chess?
It's kind of competitive. That's the thing. Is like I play with one of my best friends, and we quit playing because we were tied 2-2. We'd only play once a year. And it was like too intense. Like so, yeah.
Oh, just play Catan. It'll foster your friendships.
Yeah.
I really
Well,
want to play Catan.
Yeah. At
I know
least
how
did
to
it
play
to
chess.
I hate that game.
Everyone knows how to play chess.
I want to keep telling people they're gonna roll a 7 and then piss them off when they roll a 7.
Oh my god.
I hate that
The
game.
most dangerous moment comes with victory. I kind of like this one. I was thinking there could be a story like not genre, but like trope or whatever, but a version of it would be like you're a drug dealer and you actually like square the market on your block. So you totally have won, your top dog. All of a sudden you've entered then the arena of the city and they immediately kill you. So it's like success becomes extremely dangerous the higher you go. That's kind of like a cool type of story that could apply to a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
The worse the man, the better the soldier.
I think, therefore, I
Ooh.
am Napoleon Bonaparte.
Straight up. It's the people who are
Say
in the
that.
wrong who get angry. That's like the Shakespeare one, kind of. Shakespeare said it better.
Somebody stop me, Napoleon Bonaparte.
The real one.
Rascality has limits, stupidity has not. There's a joy in danger. In war, there's but one favorable moment. The great art is to seize it! Exclamation mark. That's not bad. We get in quicker by the back door than by the front. Wisdom.
That's what she said.
No dirty thoughts,
waiting
Chad.
for it.
Stop.
Yeah.
No warning.
Put your here's another almost sexual one. Put your iron hand in a velvet glove.
Oh, that's the same as speak softly, carrying a big stick.
Yeah,
Something
totally.
similar.
And that's also sexual. Big
Is
stick.
there a character?
Yeah.
Is there a character called Iron Hand?
No, but you can make it now.
They're iron
He fights velvet glove.
No. Iron Hand versus Velvet Glove.
Iron Hand, the best, not blowjobs, hand jobs in the carnal universe.
Jesus Christ.
Would Iron Hand be like a Nazi and Velvet Glove is like a very effeminate gay man?
Yeah, they'll
make a
do it.
robot character who
Wow.
gives amazing hand jobs.
Iron Claw.
The move,
That would-
velvet glove's move is called slap, and he goes velvet glove slap. Velvet glove
You-
slap.
You joke, Rini, but like there are sentient rocks that people can make move in Connell's universe, and people end up using those sentient moving rocks for any number of things.
Oh, I'm sure you can make it work. I wasn't joking.
Okay.
Go for it.
It's like Iron Fist, though.
Oh yeah, velvet
Oh,
glove.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's a fist, not a hand.
Yeah, Jake knows a lot about fisting too. He's got a lot of those
It's not worth it.
to fist.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
What
it's
did
a
no? Thank you.
Disappointing. Julie Pascal says, "Good night, everyone. Adulthood is when you have to enforce your own bedtime," and I think that's a Napoleon quote.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yeah. Good
Yeah.
night, Julie. Thanks for
Good
hanging
night.
out.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, what was I going to say? Julie said that she showed one of my videos to her daughter, but it was one where I started the video by going chuck, 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 chuck for like 10 minutes. And she's like, Narwhal, don't start your videos like that.
Might be a little off-putting to some people, yeah.
We should always go before our enemies with confidence. Otherwise, our apparent uneasiness inspires them with greater boldness.
Yeah, man. A lot of life, a lot of success in life is one big confidence play. You can almost define reality if you're confident enough.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then there are people who just, have no concept of reality and think they're hot shit when they're not.
Yeah, and that's super sweet. A starving army is actually worse than none. That could be a good comic too. I actually seriously think about.
Because they'll turn on you.
Yeah, like it'd be a cool way to start a story. Just like some people that are fucking hungry behind enemy lines and what they do.
Yeah, like an audience that you're not providing the content for is worse than having no audience because they could turn on you too, right? If you apply it to like the internet and influencer space stuff, like
Are we feeding the audience?
Yeah.
yeah, that is essentially what you're doing when you're making stuff for them.
No, I'm saying like right now, this stream.
Ask the audience, are you guys fulfilled?
Are you guys starving?
How are you guys feeling in chat? Tell us your feelings.
Dango Solo says, Narwhal, start all your videos like that. Chuck, 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 1, 2.
Sega.
The reason I beat the Austrians is they did not know the value of 5 minutes.
What does that even mean?
Okay.
Put a
With
rogue in
great
the
power
limelight
comes great
and he will act
responsibility.
like an honest
Quote
man.
suck now, Narwhal.
Yeah, we're almost done. We're ending with the whimper and not a bang. That's a Napoleon Bonaparte quote.
What is
too.
happening with the stream?
No,
Did
this
you-
is a good one. Put a rogue in the limelight and he'll act like an honest man. That's good. Remember that a true man never hates. He rages and his bad moves never last beyond the present moment, like electric shocks. Liberty and equality are magical words.
Yeah, man, you can hypnotize a whole fucking populace with that shit.
Oh, we're almost done.
We're done with the Napoleon ones.
Yes.
Oh my god, did you just copy the entire Wikipedia quote section? Or
did.
like,
I
why
deleted
are you
some of
so
them. I deleted like
masochistic?
3 or 4. I went through and read them.
okay.
But yeah, so now there's 120 Shakespeare quotes. But I think we might save that for another time, especially because I was thinking I'd keep an eye on the time anyway when it gets to 2 hours, and it's
Oh,
2
so
hours.
is that what you were waiting out the clock?
Yeah,
I'll do this next time. We don't have that much to talk about. I'll just have a list of quotes ready to read until we hit the time.
yeah.
Nice.
No,
If
there
it-
were some interesting ones in there. It wasn't
If
all
it worked for like Muhammad Ali or whatever, it works for me. Just reading quotes.
bad. Wait, what? Is that what he did?
Yeah,
Confused.
or maybe he made up quotes too. I don't know.
Yes.
Aren't all quotes made up?
Seem like a bee.
Yeah, well, some quotes. Yeah, who said the shit first?
Everybody's
happens.
misquoting Napoleon now. And
during this, I got one new sign up for Connell the Barbarian. So thank you very much, whoever signed up.
Hey.
I'm getting closer to 50.
Back finish to everybody. I should have been posting a link. I was too distracted.
I got earlier on my stream we broke 36K on Lost Pages 3. Thank you guys.
Millions of stuff.
Awesome.
Nice job, Phil.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Apparently, Rini got like most of her work done on Fiendish now. Like she's finally done.
I've been done with everything I have to do.
You're past like 170 now. It's amazing.
Oh yeah, yes, we're closing in on 172. So thank you guys so much.
Damn.
No, I'm hoping to. I'm just waiting for a few colored pages. Like I have like the lettering done. I'm just waiting to combine the final colors on. I think we have like 8 pages left. So I'm hoping that'll be done in like a week, and then we'll be going to print.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, excellent. Any
Nice.
progress updates for you, Noel, on something you're working on, or?
Yeah, just working on the trailer for Earthbound campaign this summer
Nice.
and fulfillment for Cerberus, which is happening pretty soon here. And that's like that's putting it on a different hat, and it kind of like pros and cons. It's kind of nice to change it up, but also it's not my favorite thing to like set up print files. Like what yesterday, I was just designing the back cover for Cerberus, and that doesn't come super easily to me. It took like all morning, but then it looked pretty good by the end of it.
Nice.
I like designing stuff and doing the whole. I mean, it's enjoyable in a way. Like doing the whole back and forth of the print files is fucking annoying, but like doing the final design and like the typeface, it's like cathartic because you're dressing everything up, and it's like, oh my god, my baby's coming together.
Yeah, I like picking like the page. You're like, I'm gonna do the title page, and then like a little insert here, or like at the end. At the end, I'm gonna do a short story. I'm gonna do about the author page, or like a coming up next page. It's kind of fun to build the book that way too, like adding extra pages or whatever.
Yeah. I was like kind of shifting everything around, like, ooh, how to order like the extra content. I love that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, I'm totally on the opposite end of the project that you guys are on. You're like wrapping stuff up, and I'm like getting going on stuff. Like today, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I like laid out 9 more thumbnail pages, and I think there's nothing untoward on these I can show. Yeah, look. Got some more thumbnails going on. Covering
reviews.
Detailed ass thumbnails that aren't.
Yeah, just publish those. That's what I
want
was.
to. I want to see, does this communicate like, Master must have killed beautiful broodmother again, bastard! While we never even fuck. And then one was like, maybe we not need female. Maybe we can.
Well, that does read like an ass very clearly. So good job
Okay,
there.
and then
They invented being gay.
he was peeping on that bloke's ass. No peep, I swear.
Oh no, those are the people that are super homophobic, right?
Yeah, the blocks, they're very homophobic, and that's like trying to set up. I can't show these pages. Oh no! So Narwhal really liked the little shaman dude from the other one. So I'm like, I'm gonna bring him. I've basically added a scene to earlier on in the book, And I'm like, I was gonna have basically this big block guy is like trying to raise an army, right, by like getting brood mothers, and it's not working out for him. And he has like this little fucking shaman guy in a cage, and he's like, is bitch pregnant yet? And he's like, no, master. But yeah, I got the little novel likes the little
I like
mess.
him. Yeah,
Yeah,
Little dude.
he's coming back. It's canon. He's
inspired
got
by
his- give him a
inspired by
special.
Napoleon.
He's trapped in the cage.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I can't show half of this stuff.
Gonna be good.
Oh, but and also, if you guys want to sign up to this comic, you can go to carnalcomic.com, and I've got the mailing list up. One of the bigger developments is I finally nailed down a design for a character called Meat, who's like the main babe from this book, and that's there she is. She's a block, aka a blue orc, and there's Meat.
Nice.
Sweet.
He's looking
I like
good.
her.
I like the bone placements. Well done.
A bone kini, or a
Thick. I like it.
Well done.
yeah. She was the one that I'd struggled on design wise for a while, but
There's
yeah,
the link. Alex just dropped the link. Go sign
yeah.
up.
Go sign up. If you sign up, yeah, you'll get, and you back the project, you'll get like a free extra thing that I don't know what it is yet. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun writing. I wrote the story out, and I already shown you guys and even my chat like the first few pages, and I realized I just wanted to expand on things and set things up more, and I'd and ahhed about like adding a couple more scenes at the beginning. Like I wanted to, do you always want to jump in to an action scene and you don't let yourself do something slower and set-up-y in the beginning and then decide later, you know what, I'll actually let myself do it, because that's what I'm going through now.
Yeah, that was the entirety of chapter 2 for me, because I was like, people want action. But don't worry about it. Like, you need to set things up. It'll be worth it.
Yeah, so I've added the blocks were like a big enemy in this book, but they didn't really get set up of their motivations and stuff, and the villain never really seemed that villainous. So like when something happens to him at the end, you're not really going to cheer for it. But like, yeah, I decided to I've added like 15 pages at the beginning of like a couple of scenes that sets them more up, and you know.
Cool. Yeah, I think I remember the early version I read. I felt sorry for the main bad guy because he really gets a terrible fate, kind of.
Yeah, he's different now. Like he literally now, yeah. You would have felt bad for him because of what happens, but literally in this first one, he's like angry that the woman isn't getting pregnant, so he just literally like punches her into pulp in one giant punch, and then says, "Bring me more slut."
Oh yeah. So yeah, kill that guy.
Yeah, there you go. Now he can die. No,
That's pretty shitty. That's a little much, don't you think?
what, for him to do that?
I don't know, but
Yeah, he's not a great guy.
I have suspicions.
of him.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I can't show this off. I can't show any of the things because what nipples in it.
Don't spoil
don't
too
spoil.
much either. I've been
gonna-
instructed. Oh, sorry, Phil.
I said I'll be back. I don't know if you're ending the show or whatever, but I have to go grab some laundry. So
Okay.
if you're not, then yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure what to do to stay live or end it. Maybe we should end it.
We can wrap it up. It's been a couple of hours.
We'll just
Yeah.
continue shooting your shit and blabbing and spoiling our projects.
Do you want
Yeah.
to spoil more of your project, Rini?
I have been told by people to stop sharing. Like literally, a couple of people. It's like I have like a couple of people who really want me to spoil everything, and then someone got annoyed at me for posting another panel because I got this color page of Ragnar, and it's
You mean the colored Ragnar
gorgeous.
piece?
Yeah, well, I posted on
So
Twitter too, so you can just go to my Twitter. But anyways, I've been told to stop posting things, so I won't, because I think I've already I don't think I've spoiled anything. Like you guys have seen what I post, and it's all not spoilery. And even the way I talk about the characters, I haven't talked about the twist because I can talk about the characters and their motivations, but the twists are what really makes the story. So don't worry, guys.
Nothing I've seen her say publicly or show off would spoil anything about the actual book. Like, no, like, but when it comes to spoilers, there's like a difference between something being an actual spoiler and people feeling like they've been spoiled. And I've tried to boil it down to, if you're too specific about a reveal, then it feels like a spoiler.
Yeah, you have to know what your big game changer points are in your story, and as long as you avoid that, I think everything else can. Well, it depends on the story, but I think it's fine to talk about everything else.
It's like, so you could say something that sounds like a big deal, but it isn't. But when you're like a reader waiting for the book, you obviously have this anticipation, right? That's that excitement of wanting to read it. A creator could say something that isn't actually a spoiler, but still at the same time takes away some of the reader's anticipation because it felt like a spoiler.
Yeah, like my thought process is I always think about pages I can post that, because like seeing the art also builds anticipation, and that's I also just want to show stuff because like all artists, you have an urge, you want to show people your stuff, but at the same time, like there's really a lot of stuff I haven't shown. There's like a really awesome page where somebody's well, I'm not going to say, but see, I know what I'm doing. I'm very careful. So anyways, yeah, it's you guys haven't been spoiled. Don't worry.
Dango Sola says, do you feel a need to have a game changer in every issue? I mean, that's what do you mean by game changer in that respect?
Well, for the way
who does that is Mark Millar does do that. I'm pretty sure he'll put a dope twist in every single 20 pages almost. It's kind of a flex if you can do it, but I don't know.
Oh, that's really masterful. Yeah, I'm not Mark Millar, but every volume of Fiend is just sort of like I try to frame it in, well, what is every character, like what their starting points and beginning points are different, of course, but I like to have every book I think has a pretty big reveal because it is a mystery story. So
yeah, like Dacky Frank says, what is a game changer? It's like a reframe of information you've already received, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can be simple, like even just changing the environment or changing a new character entering can be a game changer though, because it really spices things up or whatever.
Yeah, I worry about doing too much of that stuff. Like if it constantly feels like things are twisting all the time, and so then you're like, okay, I need to have scenes where stuff breathes, and then it's like you go through those scenes and then you worry that they're boring, so then you like consolidate them a bit. Then after consolidating them, you're like, wait a minute, is this now too dense?
Like it's never going to end.
Yeah,
the struggle will never end.
Yeah.
The scenes I wrote today are characters basically walking around in a cave and like looking for each other, and one of them was hiding and then they get unhidden, right? And like to me, that's not really anything happening, right? But I'm still worried that the scenes are too dense because of too much text happening, too many people talking, too many changes of location in too short a time. But then at the same time, thinking all those changed locations look too similar. That's the constant balance.
I'm sorry. I think some space also really reframes. Like getting feedback helps, but I think if you want like a good view of whether you achieve what you're going for, like sometimes when you first create it, I do this with my thumbnails. I try to do like my first draft of thumbnails, and then I'll usually go do something else. I work on a campaign, and after like a couple weeks come back and review it, and actually I'll do that again, like pencils, inks, and I change so much stuff. But it's like, when you look at a piece of a drawing and you come back after some time and then you see all the mistakes you make, even if your art has improved now, it's just like viewing it with fresh eyes. So I think giving yourself some breaks instead of just being like this close to it for too
Mhm.
long.
I was very much inspired by your paneling in Fiendish 1 and 2 because after reading that, I felt like my paneling was potentially too simplistic and too not necessarily repetitive, but it was like I wanted to make it quicker to read. And I thought that was potentially valuable because I was like, well, I don't want people to have to sit on a page for a while. But then you had pages that had like maybe 2 more panels than I would usually put on them. And it didn't slow the reading of it down. And I was like, okay, you should probably try and do more of this.
I don't think my paneling is special, but thank you.
It's I mean, what even is special? It's just the flow of events, right? It's the
Yeah.
flow of the density. It's the contraction and retraction of like smaller panels, bigger panels, focusing on these particular types of shots, pulling back to this type of shot. Like there was one panel I was drawing today where I'm like introducing the king and like his throne room, and the first shot I drew, the first time I drew it, I'm like, it's a pulled out shot of the whole throne room, and then the characters are small, and I'm like, no, what has really been introduced here? The king is being introduced, not the throne room. So it should really be a shot that has a larger drawing of the king and has an expression of his rather than like, introducing the throne room. But
I think it also makes a difference when you see something printed, because this is really weird experience I've had where like you can try to emulate what you read, but I don't know, it's like everybody has your own sort of like what works for your style, and you don't really know how it feels until it's all printed in a book. So I noticed this with book 1, like I'm adding more panels in book 2 because like I looked at book 1 and I'm like, I should use more panels. I think that works better for my style. So maybe like print stuff out. I would suggest that. Do your layouts and then print them out at to size, maybe.
yeah, that's why I've drawn them at size. That's literally why I've drawn them at this size, because this is the size they potentially be printed, but it might end up a bit bigger. But it's a very good point. Like, because on these ones, I worried that they were like a bit too dense, but to be honest, it's fine.
That's fine. It's fine.
You know, with Dango Sola saying, do you need a big reveal all the time? So have you guys ever contemplated using the feeling of a big reveal for something that isn't necessarily a big reveal? Because I found whilst reading certain mangas that just the way the information was laid out would make a moment feel more impactful, even though it wasn't that big a moment. So it kind of has like the feeling or aesthetic of a big reveal, even though it might not necessarily be. Have you ever contemplated that? Or
I feel like that's kind of almost tricking the audience, though, and it usually doesn't work. That I get annoyed. Well, I might be misunderstanding what you're saying, but I think there are different types of big reveals. You have big reveals that are like, whoa, that the villain was his father all along. And then that's like, whoa, you want to do like a double page spread, or oh, this character dies, double page spread. But then you have the smaller reveals like, oh, like me and my mortal enemy, the problem I had with him was all a misunderstanding all along. And that's like an internal reveal. It's not a big showy scene, but that can also be like a double page spread, and you can use framing and all your artistic skills and backlighting and stuff to make it look really epic. But that would be hollow if the emotional turning point wasn't there.
yeah, I get
But
you.
I don't think you should fake it, because that the audience will see through it.
Well, no, I don't mean about faking it where it's like not a reveal. There is still a reveal happening, but it's just like the way like a character on one panel could go like, oh my god, and then on the next panel it could be like a really big textless drawing of like an object they've just comprehended. But it's not like a huge character twist or anything like that. It like that moment, that way of conveying that moment can give it a lot of gravity, even though like what is really being revealed here.
I think, well, you're also doing comedy. There's a little more leeway with that. It can almost be funny if it's like, the big reveal is like that you think there's a tower, but then you turn around and it's actually his penis. Probably that scene probably does happen in your book, and so that's not like a huge character or plot moment, but it's funny. So I think you can get away with that in comedy.
I get you. Yeah, no, like I want to use an example, but I don't want to just show a bunch of
You don't want to
stuff.
spoil it either.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
I'm thinking I should probably just not talk about everything, but
No, chat wants us to keep going.
no, like it was funny. Thank you, Frankie said. Finally, Hyper Wizard is interesting. So, like, these are the fun discussions that I can't do because they're explorative, right? It's basically questions about how do you do this certain thing. On my show next week, I kind of want to ask people, how do you develop your stories from start to finish? And I'm not doing a slideshow and not bringing a big presentation or making a grand point, but like, I feel like that would be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, that would be.
Mhm.
I love to see what everyone's process is because mine is pure chaos.
Mhm.
Oh, now I just want to talk about it now.
Let's go!
Well, oh god, I'm just gonna cannibalize my whole
Screw
fucking...
Phil! Oh, where you went? It's the longest laundry break. Who goes and does laundry in the middle of the stream? It's on shame him.
Well, like, when someone's just read like 2 pages of Napoleon Bonaparte quotes, I guess that's as good a time as any. But okay. Let's just at least do this bit. When you're first starting thinking about a story you would want to do, where does that come from? Is it just you're idly thinking and you put a couple of things together and think are kind of cool and then think maybe there's something there? Are you watching something else and going, oh, I want to make my own cool thing of this, but mixed with this? Like, where does it incept?
Go first, Narwhal.
I could give an example of thinking with Jared Jules, my collaborator on Hotel Story. That'll be the book we do next fall, and he's my colorist on Cerberus, and he's a musician. He's like a pretty good buddy. But we were thinking about doing a second project, and we're like, what should we do? And at first, we were throwing out random ideas. One of them was like kind of a Jet Set Radio style idea of like punks kind of on one side of the city, spray painting everything, and architects on the other side of the city trying to stop their shit from getting spray painted. And maybe there would be like a magical paint that can't get erased once you spray paint it. So that was like came from us talking, and I didn't feel that passionate about it for like a year almost. But then only in the last like couple of weeks, we've both started to get like more into it. And it's a lot of it, I don't know, it comes from like visualizing it where it gets in some ways like less simple, because that first way is like, architects here, punks here, spray paint. And I'm like, yeah, but the new idea is a little more complicated. But we had this idea of, because there's like a metaphor. That's kind of what got me excited, I guess. But it was that the spray paint, it's about like, a giant city, and it's a block that's meant for destruction. So it gets marked, and it's like, this is like a logging thing. Like they mark trees to get demolished or whatever. And so they have a special paint that's for demolishing, and they find out there's also a special paint for protection. And so like the punk kids that don't want to leave the city that's going to get demolished, they find the protection paint. And then they're kind of fighting over this, like, first if you even get the paint, you got to tag the building that you want in the right way with the right symbols for like because there's this like godlike satellite in the sky that'll respond to destroy things based on what you tag or protect things based on what you tag. And so they're kind of fighting over, it's like good guys, bad guys, a little bit of who has the what paint and how they get it and stuff. So that's still kind of early in the stages. Like we don't have that much worked out, but that was kind of the point where I was like, oh, we should try and keep working on this and see where it goes, kind of, I think.
So it sounds like the process of that was you were presented with a piece of media that you took in and enjoyed, but then it is like that piece of media also almost inspired you to start trying to twist it and like, well, what if this, what if this? So you added like a fundamental twist to like, what if the paints were more magical, right? And then it sounds like you started to think, okay, how is that justified within the world? Like you start talking about that satellite that's defining it. It's like, okay, how would that actually manifest in a story? And then you're thinking, what are the social implications? Because then you're thinking, how does this affect people?
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
decisions would they make?
Mhm.
Yeah. For me, the part of inspiration, a lot of times it's the magic systems. It's like the fun of, a paint that destroys and a paint that protects. Like as soon as I thought of that, I got excited. And it's like that was with Earthbound, the gun that if you shoot someone, they join your team. Like that was the point of getting really pumped on the idea, kind of.
Mm.
Yeah. World building. It's fun.
Mhm.
Where do you usually start if you're thinking of something, a story reading?
s- So I do write down a lot of ideas. I actually have like my emails are full of like drafts. I put them in my email drafts, and it's just like I have story ideas, and then some pan out. Most are just stupid ideas, or I'll have like an idea for a spaceship with a cool functionality, but then I couldn't. Like I'm really picky with what I expand on, though. I think this is why it took me so long to put out anything that I've written. I mean, I have in the past, but I've never been happy with it. With anything that I wrote, there have been a couple of things, but really, like I think because I'm always really busy, and I'm also writing something that I have to draw. I almost feel like it's not. I have to make it worth it. So unless it's an idea that I really am 100% sure it'll be worth the effort, I usually don't take it past a rough draft. But like with Fiendish though, with Fiendish, it started out with I can't say what it's actually about because that's the mystery. But the core concept of Fiendish, like what the actual world changing mystery is about, that has never changed. And I realized I started with this idea of I want to do something original and fantasy, and I was really into Pathfinder at the time, so I figured I could like tie my like Pathfinder nerdery into building my own fantasy world. But then there was a message I really wanted to say, and I think that's what sort of gives me the go ahead. If I have a cool idea that also I can mix with a theme or a message of sorts that I really believe in, like that's the key. Because if it's just a cool concept, I usually I have trouble committing to it, and I admire writers who can, because it's still, you have stories out there that aren't like some grandiose message or like don't. That's still entertainment, but I have trouble committing to that. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with doing something that isn't like, like doesn't have, you're not like talking about something world changing. And I guess not. How do I explain this? I don't want to sound stuck up like, ooh, everything I write has like some deep philosophical meaning. But I just try to go ahead. I can only go ahead with something if I think there's like something I believe in. But
And you mean theme wise, right?
yeah, theme wise.
So like you mentioned, you used the word theme a lot, right? Especially because I think you're engaging with the concept of theme more recently with your own work, so it's like you're probably trying to parse it a lot more. What do you personally mean by theme?
I guess like the core message of the story. Like how every story can boil down to one or two lines or one concept, and that's what makes it unique. And I think like the dressing of it, and every story has been done before in a way, and everything we create is by necessity of us existing in this world derivative of something that's already been done before. But it's it's all these elements that have been done before arranged in a way that is sincere, that is original to the writer, that makes your work new and original, and I think memorable and long lasting for the readers. I think that matters a lot. Like the sincerity of, I really believe in what I'm doing now, regardless of genre, even if it's humor, even if it's like a slice of life story. And like, I don't like going ahead on something unless I can figure out what the sort of like the heart and the core of this like story of a chick going to a grocery store and encountering a haunted cabbage is. And if I don't believe in it, then, you know, I won't do it. But like the development process, I'm going on too long about this. I think
No, it was theme.
Does it take time like then so it stews for like a year or two even before?
Yeah, like this is what I mean by chaotic. Like it takes me a lot of time, and that's why I admire people that don't. People like, I don't know. You have people who are, probably they've just been they're more practiced as writers. Like Stephen King puts out things like one novel a year, but the George R. R. Martin is a different story. He's just he doesn't know how to constrain himself. But I think for me, it just takes a lot of time and nuance, and I spend a lot of time figuring out the details. But yeah.
Yeah, like on my last project, Hollow Fist, I found that it took me fucking ages to think. It took me a lot of time, but I think it's because I came into it by thinking of just characters first. And I think even Downloader Solo had a comment related to this. Like, do you tend to focus on character over plot when you're starting? So like I used to think of characters that would play off each other and think of scenarios they could be in which would cause them to play off each other. But they never had any growth or development. They were who they were, and that was, you know, it was like a sitcom, right? You have Fry, Bender, Leela, and they are who they are. And you put them all in a room together where this crazy thing's happening, and they all act like Fry, Bender, and Leela, and that's great. That's funny. But I never really contemplated that the character has to actually change through the events, but not as in the personality changes, but they kind of like grow and learn things. They adjust themselves a little bit. So it was really hard for me to actually figure out a story using the characters, because like the story is the change they go through. So I had to like just think about them for a long time and wait for a story to emerge. But nowadays it goes a lot quicker because I'm kind of focusing more on just like a story. Like, what would the fun story be? Like, what's the point? What's the change? What is an interesting change? What would it be good to see this character turn into, or whatever? And it makes story development a lot quicker now. But
yeah, I think the more you practice, it definitely gets easier, and I've realized that now as well. I think we're both artists who are learning to write. Like Narwhal and Phil are probably more practiced in this, but like I've been writing privately for years, but I've never put anything else. But that makes a difference. I think like getting feedback and everything that really hones your writing skills and confidence and your process. But I'm kind of the opposite, where okay, I've never had to talk about like how you develop something, so this is hard. I started with plot and world building, and then I had to find characters through that, and that was the hardest part for me, because
that is interesting.
like everything for I love mystery stories, and like obviously I love world building, but I know that's just dressing. That's not what would actually capture people. And I started out by asking, well, what part comes the most easily to me? Well, plot. So I was all plot. This character, I was almost like moving characters around like on a chess piece. Like, this is what needs to happen, and then like that was my first few drafts, several drafts to finish. But then I realized that, okay, this makes sense. It's functional. But then in like if a robot wrote this makes sense. But then it needs to be something more. Like I started seeing things upon like leaving and coming back. And then other people were saying, well, but what is this character's motivation for doing these things? And I started showing it to people, and they would ask me that. I was like, you're right, I don't know. I just put them here
Yeah.
because the plot needed to happen. And I'm like, I need to like merge the plot with their character development, and then ask at every step of the way I had to fit in why they did this with like their story, but then with the larger plot, and everything had to just fit together right, and it had to kind of like be woven together across time. And that's why I have like 20 drafts of my story.
No, I mean you're saying that as if like saying it's different. I think I did the same stuff, but so think of characters. What scenarios would it be fun, interesting to put them in? But then it's like, okay, now you have to string together these scenarios, and that's the plot, right? These are going to happen in these places, and they're going to go. And then it was the clicking of realizing, no, that you kind of do it from the other way. Like, what is the change they have to go through, and what situations would you put them in to cause that change? Then how could you string them together in an order that would go through the process of change that a human would go through?
Mm-hmm. And like my favorite part though is when it's almost like, and this is my favorite part about writing, when you've laid the groundwork so much. And at first, with every story, and I reached this a few times with Fiendish, where I was just completely blocked. Like, I know this could be better, and I think I might have to overhaul the whole thing, but I don't want to yet, and I'm just stuck, and like everything sucks, and I want it to be better, but I don't know how. But miraculously, somehow, I've pushed through. And the result of that is like when you get to the point in your story where we were talking about how, I think we were talking about how like elements in your story sometimes manifest and you don't even know what you're influenced by. It just happens, and it's like writing and creating is kind of therapy sometimes for us, and we're not even aware of the things that we subconsciously put in there. And those realizations, but also realizing that like right now, I'm at the point of the story where I worked on it so much, and like the plot and all the perfunctory things make sense, and most of the character development makes sense, but I'm just trying to make it better. And the things I'm changing now are not what the characters do, but their internal reasoning for why they do it. And that's the coolest thing, where when things just click and you realize that them doing this makes sense, but I just need to say why they're doing it, and that will make the story better.
Yeah, the why for anything happening is like the true magic in a story.
Yeah.
Did-
If that makes sense. I'm trying to make sense.
It makes great sense. No, like, look, that's the point. I think these discussions are the best because they're explorative, and you haven't already thought of an answer for this, so you get a real answer. It's going back to that Napoleon Bonaparte quote about the amateur versus the professional, which is better, right? Like the amateur prostitute. Like, you're being completely honest when you think about this stuff. Did you have a different process novel with writing? Like, we've talked about those problems we had. Did you have similar ones, or did you have different problems because you came at it from a different angle?
Yeah, it's hearing Rini talk about it. It reminds me of the feeling of the good feeling. I can definitely relate to. And then there's kind of like bad feelings when it's not working, and sometimes it does mean you're redrafting or whatever. I think Earthbound Grand Prix was a weird. It doesn't always go like this for me, but that one I wrote it, got 30 pages in, hit a dead end, started over. Got 60 pages in, hit a dead end, started over, and then on the third draft I got all the way through. But each time I knew more about how it was going, and it did click at a certain point, and I was kind of like, "That's what happened." Like you're almost more observing what happened rather than, and you're just dictating what's happening rather than trying to come up with it, kind of. And that feels really good when that happens. But it is kind of hard to get there. It doesn't always happen.
Yeah,
Well, and real quick, that's what I make fun of I'm venting a lot about the writer talking about with his wife about whether or not he should kill a character. I'm venting a lot, making fun of him because that's what he says. He says like, "It happens. I can't change it. It just happens. She dies, okay?" And like, no, you could change it. You're the writer. His wife was like that. She's like, "Wait, how does she die?" And he's like, "A brick gets thrown by a hick driving down a road on a truck." And she's like, "Well, can't he just miss?" And he's like, "No. She can't just miss."
that is kind of funny if you try to write a story.
It is also interesting how conflicted you are about killing your own characters, because you literally have a whole story of like people have guns but no one dies.
Yeah. I know. I think about it maybe more than average, but then in Grand Prix, I'm finally killing people, and it feels good.
What?
You rip the band-aid off the murder band-aid.
Yeah. Wolfer says, Narwhal, what Old Testament story most stands out? I don't know. That's a good question, though. There's people who know better than me, but the King David, when he was hiding, I don't know if this is Old Testament. I think it is. When he was hiding in the desert, and then the king wanted to kill him because of a prophecy. All that stuff was awesome and pretty relatable. There's a few others. There's a guy in Comicsgate who knows way more than me, and he randomly DM'd me once. He's like, "There's a couple good Old Testament stories I think would make good stories." And but yeah, I don't know. Do you guys know?
Nope.
Don't know any
Never
Bible
even
stuff.
read it.
Yeah.
Are they just like pure stories? Just like hardcore bait, like very viscerally communicative stories?
Well, that's another thing I'm like a little confused by, just a little bit, because people say, I've heard they say, that the Bible is the greatest story ever told, and sometimes I'm like, no, it's not. Like, it's not that.
They say
But
that
then,
about different religion.
yeah, but then you can kind of like look at it and you're like, okay, it's pretty freaking good. I gotta give you that.
Hmm.
But there are sections of it that are, I like if it gets a little more fairy tale-y, a little more plot, like actual, because some of it is not necessarily like that. Like even, I don't know, like Cain and Abel or something is like pretty fast and not actually really like a short story. It just goes really fast. And the story of Job's kind of cool, where God makes a bet with the devil. The devil's like, because they were still friends, he hadn't fallen yet, and he goes and visits God and God's like, "How you been, Satan, Lucifer? What have you been up to?" And he's like, "Oh, nothing, just going here and there, to and fro on the earth." And he's like, "So how are my people doing down there?" And he's like, "They're doing okay." And God's like, "Aren't they great? They really love me." And he's like, "Are you like who?" And he's like, "Job. Look at Job. He loves me more than anyone else." And say he's such a good man. And Satan's like, "He's only good because you give him everything. You gave him this great life. Of course he loves you." And God's like, "That's not true. He would love me anyway." And Satan's like, "Well, I tell you what, let me do whatever I want with him for a little bit and see if I can get him to stop loving you." And God's like, "Sure." So Satan murders his family
Oh,
Yeah.
and
The
does all
devil
the
trolls God into ruining the guy's life.
wow.
yeah. And then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but I think Job does kind of like lament and complain a little bit. Eventually, he kind of holds out for a little bit, but he does kind of get broken. So Satan sort of wins, and then God gets mad at Job, and God's like, "Come on, Job, what the hell? You're supposed to be my boy."
He's supposed to be my top guy.
Yeah,
It's
But
like,
then-
give me my family back, asshole.
yeah. So then God does give him his stuff back, but it's like a new wife and a new kids, and
Oh, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
Here you go. Like,
That's
it's
wild.
kind of like that Napoleon quote of judging a guy by his worst day, not his best.
Oh yeah, Napoleon, the wisest man ever. Clearly, oh god.
Oh,
that
just
the
someone
next
said
version
Joseph
of-
and Moses. That's awesome. That story's super awesome. And like they have to put the marks on the door to get Passover, like that shit was so good. Such good fun story stuff. That
Isn't
was
the
what
re-
was inspiration for the spray paint idea. It was Passover
Ah.
Right.
protection.
Is
Yeah.
the West's version of Confucius say? Is it Napoleon say? Well, Napoleon say.
Yeah, I mean now it is. I wasn't aware that there was Napoleon was Napoleon say the Confucius of the West, but yeah.
Danky Frankie says sometimes structure frees me from getting stuck. I don't use the whole structure to part out a story. So I have a similar thing with structure. Is like I found structure as a way to like, oh, here is like a backbone of a possible story, and then you kind of like grow it from that. But some people, it's funny that Rini's left.
Oh no, I want to talk about it, but I need to pee. I'll be right back.
I actually have to pee too. I'll be right back. Watch the chat.
That's it. You're left with me, guys. Yeah, these are the kind of these discussions are risky to have on the show. That's why we come and bring a topic, right? Because it's like, okay, you're gonna do 2 hours, so here's 2 hours worth of stuff to talk about. And then you're like, okay, maybe a discussion will come out of that. But like my favorite discussions are these ones where like you are exploring your brain, but you know, it's a risk. Like, what if you don't have anything to say? And I crashed the stream, Jake. I'm trying my best to hold it. I'm trying to give you the real thoughts. Jake, sell me that layout book. On my campaign, I do actually want to make this available. Like, I've drawn all the layouts for the pages, and I'm a real size. There's no nipples on this page. And I do actually want to like make this available on the campaign when it comes out. But yeah, go sign up, carnalcomic.com. Danky Frankie says quotes is not a topic. Okay, well, that's the format. The format of the show, Danky Frankie, is whoever is hosting does the topic and does the preparation. That's the show. So, and you also, Danky Frankie, you said talk about this now because there's no way in hell I'm watching your stream. Well, thank you. I hope one day you decide to change your mind and you'll come and watch one of my creative block episodes instead. The next, if we don't talk this subject to death, maybe we'll continue. You know what? Phil hasn't been here the whole time, so it's just me on my own stream. This is great. Seeing as people are reacting well to this particular conversation in chat, then maybe I will actually do that next week. Do you want this next week? Do you want the more in-depth version of this next week, where I'll have pointers and stuff? You know. You can always say no. These are better. Creativity doesn't need structure. Well, that's what I think. That's what I feel. I agree with you. Jake, hide before they come back. Oh, shall I do that? Tanky Frank says, lol, I'm just pulling your leg. I'll watch your stream. Oh, thank you. Wonderful. I'm very glad. I appreciate it very much. There you go. Ryan, missed my opportunity to leave.
Yeah. How dare you? Let's see how low we can get this number. Only 20 people watching. It's getting very intimate.
It's great.
Are we seeing how low we can get the stream numbers? You know, we have really good discussions in the back room sometimes. And it's like, I think sometimes when you're not as focused on putting on a show, you have the best discussions about writing.
Can we do that next week on my channel?
Just go live without telling us.
We've
been live this whole time.
Have no say. Yeah.
No. I would.
We can see it.
I do want to ask about. I do want to talk to. I just want to talk about the creative process, and I will have like slides, as in basically inspirational direction stuff to go on. But I do kind of just want to delve into people's minds. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that'll be fun. But you were talking about structure. I like just seeing random peaks of Phil's laundry in the corner.
Yeah, so my relationship with structure is I hadn't learned about it, and I'd been struggling to make stories that I felt really had an impact. Not I could think of good moments, but just not the overall like arc of a story. And then the things that I've learned with structure lately are just really helpful for that. Some people can see them as a prison because they think like, oh, I have to adhere to this. But even things like setups and payoffs, I'd never contemplated it before, but that's structure. Do a little baby version of a thing, and then later on do the big version of the thing. And then like it's almost like the story itself rhymes.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I don't like structure.
Why do you hate structure, Amy?
I don't know. But I've always been like that. I didn't even like learning to draw with structure. I was like
the tyrannical communist hand of China.
Yeah, I was conditioned to hate structure. No, everything's really chaotic. But but it's not that structure isn't important. They're good. It's good to know it's good to know the techniques you can use, because there's sort of guidelines for like you can break things down into 3x structure or 4x structure, and you roughly know you know, like you want the big down point or twist be at the end of this act, or like, and having no examples and start being able to break that down for other stories and stuff like that. And I guess it's a little contradictory of me to say that I don't like structure as well, because I like using stuff like enneagrams and character archetypes and MBTIs and stuff like that. But the thing is, I like using that as a check if what my ideas and what I want to do works, and if it fits according to like what other people have done.
I've
And
never thought about that character structure stuff, because like whenever you've talked about how you plan out and like note down your characters, I've literally always been, I guess, how you feel about story structure. I've been like, no, I know these characters, and if they're in a scenario, I know how they'd act. Like I just do. But there is a possibility that I fucking don't. And if I explored structure for the characters in a similar way that you have, I might end up being more informed on my own characters and do a better job.
well, and it's also like specifically with Fiendish, I probably wouldn't approach other stories the same way, and I haven't approached anything else I wrote the same way. But character and the nuances of exactly why everybody does everything is so important. I felt like I needed to be ridiculously thorough, and I also kind of was paranoid because I felt like that was my shortcoming. Like I had the plot, but I knew that it wouldn't work if the character, because of the actual theme of the story that I can't reveal. It's very annoying, but you guys will see why, that the characters' internal journeys mattered. But yeah, it's a really cool thing though, where the reason I almost reject thinking about structure when I'm doing plot or like anything other than characters is because to me I'm afraid of it distracting me from my story. It's like I don't want to be too caught up in following somebody else's rules for this must happen at this one point. I prefer to just kind of feel it out and plot things out and figure out how it naturally happens. And usually, I think because we're also working off of like the things we like and what's worked in the past, and kind of things like the hero's journey and the 3-act structure, these are built off of what already works for most people. Like this is just how humans psychologically consume stories. So that's why I know about the structure. I try to do my thing because it's probably just I'm insecure and I'm afraid of like being distracted from what I do. But I always go back and check. Like, did I do this right according to the textbook?
When you mean structure, do you literally mean like all of those details that would be in like a 3-act structure book and like every single one of those points? Because like that's like a whole Rolodex of things you could use, but using structure isn't necessarily you must include all these things. You need like a visit with the goddess or whatever. Like I never even think about that shit. Like to me, structure is I love abstraction and I love oversimplification, and I know it pisses people off sometimes because it's like you're just making up retarded thoughts based on nothing. But like structure to me is like you open with almost a question, then there's like the facing the obstacles is like exploring, searching for the answer, and then the end of it is like, well, not the end of it, the midpoint almost is like you get the answer, but the answer highlighted that your way of exploring for the answer was flawed, and then there's like the coming back around is like now the character like readjusts based on what they learned from the search for the answer of the question. They have a question and then they go through experiences that highlight the flaw in their question, then they go home.
Or okay, so I told you about this, Jake, but I don't think I brought it up on the stream. I have a writer friend who was very big on structure, and I might be also extra resistant to it. I'm really not that resistant, like I don't want to be told what to do. But I have a friend who like the writer friend who's like really, I feel like, over constrained by structure. And I remember talking about a character, sort of the character development that I want to do with Fiendish, and so it will just be spoilery. I guess not. I'm not going to say any details. So for example, Casimir's character development, it's not usually if you play by the rules and was basic rules of storytelling, it's your protagonist is the involved in like the initiator, moves the plot forward and everything, but then it's like they have a moral flaw, and the high point of the story is like the low point at the end of Act 2 is their moral flaw causes a downfall, and then they have to change themselves, and then they go back and achieve victory. That's like Star Wars, that's Harry Potter, that's so many stories that follow. That's like the hero's journey. And I didn't want to do that, and I think and I clashed a lot with my writer friend because she was critiquing that I didn't have that happening with Casimir. He's semi-static, but not entirely. I have this very weird structure where I have one character who finishes his development early, and then that character goes on to influence someone else who becomes this, what do you call a catalyst? No.
Yeah, no. Like, yeah, after talking to you about it, he has an arc, but then he kind of from after that arc, he then becomes a catalyst character. A catalyst character is someone who causes change in others.
Right. I never remember it. Like the catalyst character is the one who causes other characters to change. I forgot what the name is for the characters who actually go on to change the world. That's something else.
Okay.
Whatever the fuck it's called. But I have my characters change roles. So at first I have like a character who's more dynamic and goes through change, but then Casimir becomes a catalyst character for somebody else. And it's just it's like halfway a flat character arc, but halfway not. And that's when I started researching, because I wanted to justify to my friend that what I was doing could work, and she wouldn't listen to me, but she would listen to YouTube videos that was telling her the same thing. And I love my friend, by the way.
Because the YouTubers know how to explain their point.
Right, exactly. Exactly, and I don't. So that was the reason.
You're not making a video essay on your point. You're just answering someone's questions.
Yeah, I'm really bad at explaining my reasoning. But the difference is, I found this video. It's like, yes, there is such a thing as writing a flat character arc, and usually those are stories where you can tell a story from the point of view of the catalyst character, or sort of like the standard protagonist. And when you tell the story from the point of view of the catalyst character, and sort of like revolutionary stories and like Man Against the the evil country or something, those are the types of stories that can work with a flat character arc, where your character already starts out with the moral right, but the struggle is about changing everything else around them. And I have like a midway point.
You'll have a lot of flat characters in like manga, because you're not essentially telling one story, you're telling a series of different stories, right? Like if you're gonna watch a television show that has an episodic thing, like each one of those episodes is a story, so each one of those episodes would follow its own structure, but like the entire multiple seasons might not follow a whole big structure. Like, if you tell stories from a main character and you show their development, then later on they stay flat, and you show stories from other characters as they change, there's nothing wrong with that in the slightest. Like, that's almost, you would have to do that. Like if you're making manga style chapters almost too, having a Western movie style 3-act structure for your overall 10 books would almost make it unreadable, because each section of the story you're reading wouldn't be its own nestled story.
Yeah, I think manga does have a lot more of that, where it's like the character does have some growth, but that at the end of the day, it's so much manga is about the character and the protagonist changing the world around them, but while also like striving to be better. But it's usually like bettering their skills. But a lot of, especially shonen protagonists, it's like they already have the moral core correct. Like think of Deku, think of Demon Slayer kid,
whoever that guy.
Hunter x Hunter,
Who's-
yeah. I can't remember either. I'm terrible at these. I mean, I'm not really that big of a shonen fan. I'm more seinen.
Me neither.
But and like the Western stories I like tend to be like that. Somebody mentioned Gladiator in the chat. Yes, that's one of my favorite movies ever. And obviously, you know, Lord of the Rings is kind of similar in that Frodo goes through a change, but it's not a moral change. It's like he's already the one person who can carry the ring, and it's about his struggle with like following through. And I like stories like that, so that's what I want to write.
Oh, his name is Gon.
There you go.
in-
Yeah, when you guys talk about structure, what I think of is like sometimes like smaller stuff. Like I was thinking Rini Part 2 for Fiendish. I thought it had really good structure, and it just does like a classic structure trick where you have plot A and plot B, and you're cutting back and forth between them, and then they meet up, you know, at some point in the middle or whatever. And that's like structure, and that's like good. But a lot of it, yeah, you can just retrofit and be like anything you do, if it works, you're like, oh, that's structure.
Yeah. I don't. I'm
Listen.
glad you think it works, but bless you.
I was so that's an interesting way because you're talking about structure there, like it has a good composure, and like I was my take on structure was it's like a cycle. So I've never heard someone refer to structure in that way, and that is interesting because it makes me think more that like okay, A B plot like switched between nicely. That's good structure because it's like well composed.
Yeah. I like that framing. Not to get too, I guess, what's the word, esoteric about it, but I think there's almost like a way. Let me see if this makes sense. Humans consume media or entertainment, and I noticed this with songs and storytelling, and sort of just how you have like the introduction and then rising action, and then there's almost like battle, then the climax, then denouement, and that's how stories go. That's how people prefer to consume stories, and that's how songs go, and that's how poems go. And that I feel like that kind of like, because it's like a reflection of how we approach problems, and stories and entertainment is good, and stories and entertainment are a reflection and a guide for how we can live our lives and face problems in a way, in like an indirect way, and not a lecture-y way, right? So I think a lot about what makes a comic work is similar to composing a song, if that makes sense. Not
No,
make it too like hoity-toity.
It's
Yeah,
not
that can
hoity-toity.
be structure for sure.
Mm-hmm.
The rhythm of the song, like okay, to joke about that Five Voices of
Oh, great. Let's go.
part of the point with that is like a song you need to change the tone and tone and the rhythm as you go, and the idea was composing a structure of like a bunch of those different voices that changes all the time can make it interesting. But what has your relationship been with structure over the course of your like creative growth? Like I would assume you're the kind of person that would look at really great things that you enjoy, like say Tarantino films, and you would probably like analyze them, then maybe like look for stuff you've done and see if you see similar stuff, and then maybe you just have tidbits of ideas that you throw in without being constricted by a structural plan.
Yeah, I remember identifying Back to the Future and Toy Story as being like perfect scripts. So I studied those. And those are like kind of hero's journey, pretty basic, but they're so perfect. So it's kind of fun to like. And I think I tried to do stuff like that early, and I've kind of eventually gave up and just do whatever I feel like, and then hope it has good structure. But like my favorite movie is Dawn of the Dead. Yeah, the original Dawn of the Dead from 1979, and it has pretty good structure. But that one is so cool because I don't know. I love the behind the scenes too. Is George Romero? He was down on his luck and couldn't get any films made, and Dario Argento called him up, and he was at the top of his game in Italy, making horror films. And he said, "Come live at my Italian estate for a year and write whatever you want, and I'll fund the movie." And so he wrote Dawn of the Dead, and that movie is all just like, what would the characters do in that situation, and it goes through that just all the way to the end. So it's like it starts with them, the zombie apocalypse is happening. One of them knows someone who has a helicopter, but they don't want people to know that they know this because it's going to get flooded, kind of. So they kind of secretly sneak out of a news station as chaos is happening, and they take off in the helicopter. And that's like part one, and then they're flying in the helicopter. Then they're going to run out of fuel, so they have to refuel. And there's a little adventure while they're refueling, and they're like, "We can't just do this forever. This is way dangerous." So they're like, "Maybe we could land on this mall." And then the guy, their plan is to land just for a little bit. And then one guy tells them, this is what I remember. This is what I love about it. One guy, he's like, it's like a moment of inspiration from him in the moment of the story where he's like, what if we stay? Like, we don't have to keep going on this journey. Let's just stay in the mall and try to make the mall a good place that we can live. So then the whole movie shifts and it becomes them trying to fix the mall up to be a place where they can live. And then that's awesome. And then right at the end, once they fix it up all nice, a motorcycle gang comes in and tries to steal it from them. And so they fight the motorcycle gang, all chaos breaks loose, and they kind of have to, a few survivors have to escape again in the helicopter, and there's no guarantee that they're going to survive or whatever. But it's like, that's one where you like, I'm not even sure, there is structure to it, but it's like so cool that it's just, what would you do in that situation? What would they do? What would the characters do? The whole way through. But you get, the best thing about it is you get the moment of inspiration, or like agency, they call it. So, and it breaks the matrix of what the story thought it was going to be. So like it starts and you're like, yeah, like a run and gun survival story. And you're like, oh no, they're like making a den like halfway through because they had this bright idea. There's one guy in particular who's like, what if we just stay? Like, what if this is a totally different movie than what you thought, kind of?
Yeah, like it's like there's an explosion of chaos at the beginning, then a long period of like tempering and building up potential energy, and then you release that potential energy at the end in a top and tail kind of way like you did at the beginning.
Yeah. So that's I'm most inspired by that movie more than anything else. But I don't know exactly how, other than I just really like it. But
I think that twist moment, or not really a twist, but the
Reframe.
that reframing, that's one of those moments where it works well and people like it because it's based off of what a character would do, instead of like, well, you thought this is what the movie would be, but well, what would if I was playing this character realistically and like really understood how acting like a real person would act, what would they do? And that's committing to character.
yeah,
I think like that a lot. It's like you can have the most mundane setup, but if you commit, then your character and your story will be compelling. Even if it's like
it is prioritizing like what they would do more than like trying to get a super clever plot. Although some clever stuff can still happen, but
yeah, like prioritizing your character over your plot, instead of saying the plot needs to be like this because it's a survival story. Make it about the characters. Hey, Phil's back.
Oh yeah, I would never, by the way, when I was talking about putting story over characters, I would never put the plot over the characters. The plot is the thing that can change the most. The story is just like the metamorphosis you want to the reader to witness. And like, if you have a character but they're not in a position where they can really metamorphosize in the way you want to tell through the story, then like that's the kind of change I would make to a character. Like, Connell was never insecure about his power early on, but then when I knew like the story would be more engaging if he went through a change of starting off feeling insecure and then gain more confidence, like that's the change that was made to his character. Like that you created like a previous state of his character to move from and then to the new one.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the situation, because sometimes It's probably pretty nuanced. Sometimes you can change a character and that would work better, and you have to identify what the problem is. But sometimes it's the it is the plot or the story. Like, I agree, the plot takes the least amount of precedence.
Yeah, like there's a character that was in the first story of Connell all the way through, and she was pretty much a damsel in distress. And then at the end, like it felt like Connell needed to get screwed over somehow at the end, and I'm like, well, why would this happen? This wouldn't really emerge. But then I was like, maybe this damsel in distress character could have had a secret that she wasn't actually like this, and then that reframe from her character then actually screws Connell over in the end. And it's like that is an example of me changing a character to serve the story.
Yeah, because like it can be like herding cats, but you can still have some like playing like God with your story where it's not ruining the story if you're kind of like swapping out cats or changing cats or whatever.
Cats.
Did you guys look at what's on Twitter yet?
No, what's on Twitter?
I was about to share it. That's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, well done, Alex. Oh my god.
I generated Napoleon.
Yeah, Alex says, "What if character is the plot?" I was gonna say real quick with Dawn of the Dead. The thing that I wrote in my little notebook for inspiration is I say the strategy is the story. So for that one, it's like everything they're doing, that's the plot of just how you would survive. And that is how I wrote Earthbound. Earthbound is just the strategy is the story. It's like almost like a chess game between the three characters trying to get what they want.
Strategy is a story. How was your laundry, Phil?
Too much. I have a lot of clothes.
Phil, we had a decent conversation.
We're still going.
Wait, we're live?
We're still live.
We're live.
Yeah.
Aren't you glad you didn't come in with your pants off? We were determined to keep
Phil's reaction there
out.
was great.
I missed it. How to rewind?
Yeah, you gotta flip it.
That's an indication of how the conversation we just had is pretty much the kind that we would have off stream. That's the whole thing. Phil probably thought the stream was over, so he was doing his walk away from the desk bit.
Yeah, that's why he wasn't even on camera. We were determined to drag this on until you came back. No, there's only like 20 people watching now.
36. No. This is an interesting conversation. So it's great. It's slowly grown. It's slowly built. This is
Yeah.
what I feel. This is what I think the real conversation, the real tea can be.
Yeah, this is. We do have really good conversations, just behind the scenes. But I can't reveal as much as I would.
Yeah. Django Sola says, mesmerized by Jake's cat-like grooming. I can never stop fucking with my hair. When I met my mom, she's like, "Stop touching your hair. You're gonna get hair all over the sofa." And I'm like, "I'm gonna do whatever I want."
Oh, you must have been such an easy child.
I was very difficult as a child, but there are. It's my. Listen, they set me up for failure. They set me up.
Oh, it's their fault. Well, I mean, you are. Yeah, technically.
If you have a kid and they're like, "I don't want to eat this," you don't cook 5 different meals each time they say, "I don't want to eat this." You say, "You're fucking eating it."
Yeah, exactly.
So, my mom would do a whole other meal, and I'd be like, "I don't want this." It's clearly this kid is just on the whole theme of "I don't want whatever it is you're making."
Oh my god! Oh, you got spoiled. Why my child's mouth open and be like, "You shoving this down your throat right now, or you're not getting any food."
It didn't impact me that negatively.
Yeah, you're not as well now. You're not spoiled because I know people who were spoiled, millennials, and they turned out to be jackasses. You're fine.
Guys,
What? You good?
there's nudity on Twitter I wasn't ready for.
Oh,
Phil is massively emotionally negatively impacted whenever he sees nudity.
why you look so shocked?
I thought it was going to be a Spider-Man image, and then there was a butt,
Are
and then
we
I scrolled
tagged?
more, and then there was a front butt.
No. There's no tagging. I haven't been tagged in any fuck box.
No, I wasn't very.
Disappointing.
There's people retweeting.
So we've done 3 hours and 13 minutes.
Let's go for 4.
Let's go.
Hey!
Let's just start eating and like, clipping our
Yeah.
nails.
Yeah, but- oh, I need to clip my nails. Thank you, Irene.
This will really help your viewer count, Narwhal.
We got to get it down. It's that
Yeah.
company.
Yeah, we're determined to stream until there's absolutely nobody watching.
Oh, you gonna
anymore.
run it to the ground?
Yeah. What are we talking about next week?
Whose channel?
Actually clipping your nails! Oh my
Okay, next week can we have a conversation about people's creative process and creating a project from start to finish? I'll have I will have questions and I will have slides. Whenever I suggest this topic, by the way, Rini has that laugh on her face that basically makes it look like I'm giving up on trying.
No, that's not why I'm laughing.
Okay.
I'm laughing because I don't know what to do, and I have.
Oh, perfect! Yes, we're doing it.
Oh,
gotta
this
do
is
it.
gonna be torture, isn't it?
I like the questions. I bring concept art.
Sure.
I can.
You
that
know-
would be fun. I want to see like the early development process.
I
That
just
would
wanna-
that would be fun.
I want to pick people's brains about like how they get inspired, how they take that inspiration and kind of like fucking whip it up into shape of something, then potentially like what changes end up coming like towards the end or part way through that you've done in other projects that people could worry about changing too much or changing their stories from their original inspiration, but like it actually being fine. Does that sound good?
Sounds
Yeah.
amazing. I'm excited.
Awesome. So yeah, we'll
I
have
think-
a nice open-ended conversation with only slight PowerPointage. Phil's PowerPoint was inspirational to me because like he did a slight touch.
A slight touch.
What's that even mean?
It's a kind of like a Futurama reference where like Bender's talking to God and he's like, if you help people, they hate you, but if you don't do anything, they also hate you. And God's like, you just need to use a light touch.
Nobody got that until you explained.
Well, a light touch just means you do a little bit. It means don't do a massively detailed
Oh
fucking
yeah.
slideshow. It means have some like 4 bullet points in big text instead of a whole list. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And we'll have lots of quotes as backup.
I still have 300 Shakespeare quotes to go through.
Yeah, that'll be after we exhaust all our creation stories or what. I think that would be a long show already. I think we can probably all go on forever about our projects. Oh,
Amazing.
I thought you were
Here-
showing us your foot or something
Yo,
for a split second.
Here's-
I was like, "Gross."
here's what I think we should do with the
Good
quotes.
job.
Everyone for next week, bring your best quote, and then the chat can vote on which was the best quote, so we can get some quote competition.
We need more polls.
Yeah, we do. We need more.
I'm
We
the
need.
poll. That was bad. That was terrible.
We can even do Q&A. You know what? Seeing as seeing as the
POLE.
feature on YouTube,
Ha,
we
ha,
can
ha,
use
ha,
that
ha, ha.
next time.
Funny.
What'd you say, Jake?
Seeing as I don't get super chats, I can set up a Q&A feature on the stream as well, and like people can. Seeing as we're going to talk about creative processes.
Just put your
Um,
PayPal in the chat.
Oh no, it's more for like super chat's not about necessarily about money. It's about like people having a comment that they think was important. I guess, unless it's just duck emojis.
It's just ducks, bro.
Duck emojis
Get,
are
get real. Jake.
Bonk, 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 bonk.
It's all
Yeah,
about-
this is a weird show. I haven't once. Wait a minute. Wait, no, wrong one. Oh, I trimmed all the fucking bonk clips so they would happen quicker. Bonk, 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 bonk,
Nice.
I get PTSD.
This is fine.
I like that.
But I think we should prepare like early development stuff. If there's anything you guys can show, I'd love to see the whole process, like early sketches. Because Phil just mentioned it, I'm like, yes, I think that would help a lot. That'll probably make things more naturalistic as well. So
Yeah.
and we
I had
could that would kind of more natural because it's kind of hard to really decipher how you work because this is just how you work, right? So I'd like to see everyone's like actual roughs.
how to develop a project.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Maybe I will end it then, I guess, because I got to end.
What? Oh, we haven't turned into God yet. Phil, you have to clip your toenails to get the viewership down to
Yeah.
zero.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd get a little lower, but 27 is fine.
Okay.
Zed, 40% Zed, want to get out of here and get us to 26? Splatbog, you want to get out?
Oh my God! Stop chasing people
You
off.
want to go away?
Okay, everybody,
God.
make sure you back feed us before you go. Thank you. Good night.
Okay,
Sign up.
okay.